Call to order. Open session, public meetings are subject to being recorded. Your image and voice may be recorded. Oh, Mary, we're just getting started. All right, so do we want to start with maybe the simplest one with the cultural committee since they are here? So you can introduce yourself and maybe just give a rundown, just a brief rundown of your budget.
Yeah, so I'm MJ Cities. This is my third year as chair of the Cultural Council. Essentially, we have pretty much one function. People submit grant requests for various cultural programs, some of the things that the library runs or that run in the schools or that the seniors request, and things not associated with those groups. And we, figure out from our budget what ones we feel are worth giving money to, and then figure out of those and what money we have, how much we have to give them less than they may have asked for. So we get, most of our money comes from the state, which at this point, this past year was up to $5,000, and then we get some money from the town, which for the past several years has been $1,500, which is what we are requesting again. We have seen, the number of requests we get have been increasing over the years. Our budget from the state has slowly increased each year. Like for a few years, we get $100 more. I think this year it bumped up to $500 more. I think some more state funding got added in for the arts. Not a level of increase I'd expect every year, but it dipped a bit while we were getting requested during the height of the pandemic, then just kind of ballooned up a lot and now kind of settled down. But it's good in a way to not have as much money as people want, because I think we give a good bang for your buck, as it were. We don't want to just throw out money to anyone who happens to ask a lot of things, or regional things that they ask a lot of towns for, and we really try to stick to things that are in Berlin or that we expect Berlin residents are going to use. At the same time, based on what we have to work with, we have had to say no to some things that we've funded for many years, just because there's just not been enough money to go around. So if in a subsequent year the general economy is in better shape, we would probably hope in future to maybe get 2,000 instead of 1,500 from the town. We realize this isn't a circumstance for that, so we're not looking for that now, but get something hopefully down the road, so we can kind of have a better balance of what is worth funding, getting the support it could use.
Okay. You indicate how much you're getting from the state now? The grant is approximately how much?
So we are getting 5,000 from the state.
5,000?
Actually, no, excuse me. Last year was 5,000. This year we got 1,500.
1,500.
So
it's
just
right here.
Did
Okay.
our decisions on
Well, 1,500 is from the
our
town.
cycle. So we I think had
I thought that was
about
the state.
12,000 requested of us. Once we decided what grants we couldn't fund at all, that was, if we had the money to fund all of the ones we were approving in full, they were asking for about 8,700. We had 7,000 to work with, so a lot of things like library programs, we'd have to give them 100 less than they asked for example.
But you said last year was 5,000, this year was also
What was 5,500?
5,500. Okay.
So it's generally, like the first few years I was on council, we get 100 more each year from the state, but this year we got 500 more than the previous year.
Okay. I just know historically, I think the only time I ever met with the Cultural Council was around 2009 or 10, when the state cut the cultural grant, and that's how it got moved to 1,500, where it is today.
Yeah, well, fortunately, we've
From the town.
been in a position where things have remained pretty steady. From what I understand, there have been efforts, perhaps from the governor or something, to not give as much as the state house was as much as the legislature was wanting to do, but mostly funding has remained pretty steady or, increased a bit. So we're not doing bad from this. I think they're doing a good job at giving us money, and we appreciate that. And
Okay. Does anybody have questions for him? All right, I think you're all set. Thank you.
Thanks,
very much.
MJ.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're gonna miss all the good stuff.
Yeah.
You can definitely stay.
I think I can live with that.
I don't blame you one bit.
Oh, he's so funny.
So conservation is finishing their meeting in the other room. Carolyn will be over at the conclusion.
Okay.
But we do have Mr. Wheeler here for CPA. We'd like to discuss that budget.
Thank you. I'm Tim. Mr. Wheeler was my father. I'm just Tim.
Very
I was
sorry.
thinking Farmer Tim.
So, CPA has 3 projects that I can chat about tonight.
What number are you?
They're not in this.
Oh, they're not
You're
in?
not in
Mm.
that with the budget
They're
piece.
special.
We're special. But we want you to be aware of what we're doing, because we don't want to have people requesting funds from the town that they're also requesting from CPA, so we don't want people double dipping. And there are occasions when a project that we might support would also be looking for revenue from some other sources, like the
Just like last year.
acquisition of Horseshoe Pond, where there was some free cash that was applied for, and they used some conservation money. So we felt it was important to keep you abreast of where we're standing with some of the projects. To date, and I want to confer with June sometime in the next few weeks before we finally put our articles for the warrant together, because we want to be fairly accurate about the numbers that we're projecting. But over the course of the last 3 years, we've generated more than, but I mean, somewhere around $880,000 from the fee income from the town over the 3 years. And then the state match is somewhere around $780,000. So together, that means that we've had about $1,660,000 come in to CPA. And we've expended significantly less than that, probably somewhere around 450,000 less, is the way I look at the figures. Because we haven't spent any money out of the housing, community housing portion, and 10% of the funds have been going into that account over the last few years, which means that they have in their account somewhere above 200,000. And although we've expended the majority of the money that's come in to the historical, the 10%, and to open space, there is some money that should be still sitting in the budgeted reserve. So June and I will chat about that. There's also the 850 plus that's going to come back from the state for the grant that we got for the Horseshoe Pond project. And Kristen and I talked today, because that money hasn't come back to us yet, but when it comes back, our understanding it comes to CPA, the amount is going to be in excess of what CPA allocated. We allocated 840. The match is going to be 15,000, maybe more than that. They're working on some interest issues. So what we're gonna do is ask for some guidance from DOR as to whether or not that excess goes to CPA, or whether that goes back to free cash, or, you know,
Yeah,
We-
Goes back to the general fund.
that's our, you know, we want a definitive answer on that, so we know exactly how to just, you know, deal with that. And then, we also have a question about if that money were to come to us in the next month, let's say, and it goes back to CPA, where does it go in CPA? Does it go into our unallocated fund balance, or does it go back to the specific reserves that it came out of? And then, when is it available? You know, can we expend that at a town meeting in May this year, if we needed to? Or do we have to wait until it's certified?
I think you have to wait till it's certified, but I don't know that 100%.
Yeah, so we have to ask those questions, and so we're trying to get a handle on that over the course of the next few months. So there are 3 projects. One we put off to the side when it first came to us because we wanted to move forward with the Horseshoe Pond project. So that's a fence at the community garden, and they've asked for $45,000. And it's a fence that's comparable to some of the ones we've seen in other towns, community gardens like in Hudson. And we talked to the CPA folks over there, and they say that figure's comparable to what they ended up spending on their project in their town. So Carl's been very good about getting quotes and furnishing us with a lot of information and pictures, and so the application, which we got over a year ago, we're gonna vote on in 2 weeks. And I think we'll probably come up favorably for it. So it'll be on the warrant for this town meeting.
Tim, which of the 3 buckets does that fall into?
So that'll probably come out of open space and rec,
Okay,
or the balanced reserve, because it can also come out of that. I mean, that's one of the things, we'll talk with June and figure out where is the money, what's sitting there in the different accounts based on what we've been doing over the last couple of years, and what
Okay.
does that mean going forward?
my question was more on the sort of the purpose as opposed to which accounting bucket do you use?
I think we've looked at
So-
it as not, I mean, it's not community housing and it's not historic, so
Exactly, yeah.
it's really gotta be coming
Yeah,
out of the
okay.
open space and rec. And it fits into that category.
I think it
we're
does.
comfortable with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
The second project is a proposal from the rec committee for funds to put up a shelter at South Common. And they want to build a 50 by 25 foot approximately structure that would have a cement pad, be handicap accessible, sit near the pond and near the tennis courts. We suggested they talk to the select board to get an accurate understanding of where school and town land was, so they didn't run into problems with that. And at this stage, all that land is still under the control of the town. So I think they'll be cognizant of the fact that the school uses substantial amount of that land surrounding the school, but there is a location down there that would probably work. The initial proposal was modest in its appearance, and we said, we really think if you're gonna put up a structure that's gonna be here for a long time, it's a metal roof, we said, why don't you come back to us with, and ask for a little more, rather than the initial request. And so when we met with them last night, I think the committee felt that the structure looked far better and had more eye appeal, and probably would be something that people would be happy about as they drove by. And so that's $150,000. And that, depending on where we pull the money for the fence, rec and open space are all in the same package, so that would probably have to come out of the budgeted reserve as well. So those are two of the projects. The third one has come up quite recently, and we became aware of the fact that 72 Carter Street is for sale. It's 8.5 acres of land. It's the parcel that's directly across from Wheeler's garage on Carter Street, but it goes up the hill and butts up against property that belongs to the Wiedemans. And their property butts up against the Powder House land that the town owns, and Faith Lindsay's, and Faith's butts up against the town hall. So it's strategic in a lot of ways. And we thought, maybe we need to look seriously at this parcel. So when we had when the planning board had its Center Village Study Forum a week ago, one of the questions we tried to draw out from people was, the what ifs. What if parcels become available and this in the center of town? How would you feel about moving forward with the acquisition of some of those, and how would you want to see them used? And I think the feeling we came away with was there was a positive sense that if there was an opportunity to protect some land there, it was a good decision on the part of the town. There is a house on the property, and the other part of the equation is that we felt that it would give us an opportunity to acquire the house, work with a third party, have it refurbished, because it's in pretty good shape. We toured the house with Kevin Pond and really came away feeling pretty positive about the potential. So we could use CPA money for community housing along with some open space funds out of CPA to acquire the property. So the price is going to be somewhere around $400,000. And I think our assumption right now is that we'd probably try to take and apply $100,000 that would be used for open space, not out of the open space account, because that would be depleted from these other projects, but out of budgeted reserve. And then $250,000 out of community housing, and $50,000 out of money that the planning board and the housing partnership control that's come from mitigation over the years to come up with the $50,000. And if we needed to adjust that figure upwards because of some incidental costs, we pull more out of the housing partnership fund. Because right now, between mitigation from Highland Commons and way back from Brook Lane and some other sources, there's a war chest there that allows us to utilize it for this type of project. So our thought is that if we voted to create a housing trust in May last year at town meeting, and we have assistance from a consortium, the Assabet Regional Housing Consortium, that's 8 towns east of us. And they work with a group out of Newton that helps us maintain our subsidized housing inventory. And our thought was that if the housing trust were populated, and Kristen and I talked about that today, in the census form that everybody's going to get, there's an announcement that we're looking for people that want to serve on the housing trust. And Kristen and the selectmen are going to put out that word as well. And we've spoken to enough people, so we're confident that we've got 4 folks that would be willing to put their names in, and then they could be considered by the select board, because that's the appointing authority. So then the trust would be in a position to work on this project. The owners of the property have said they'd be willing to wait until town meeting to get final action from the town. So we don't have to respond immediately with funds. We've got some time here. So if the trust is populated and we've got support from the consortium, we feel this would be a good opportunity for the town to enter into the notion of working with properties that might come up for sale. Sometimes they might be distressed, they might be taken in tax title, that sort of thing, where the housing trust could begin to enter into the picture and utilize some of the CPA money for housing to promote the affordability of some of those units.
Are you talking about that you would then rent these out, or that you would be able to sell them as 40Bs?
Sell them as yeah, it wouldn't be a 40B, it's a local initiative. So it's different than a 40B, but you still end up assuring its status as an affordable unit. It still has to be sold through a lottery.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a single-family unit, you can't give preferential treatment to someone from town, which is unfortunate. If they're duplexes, for instance, or there are multiple units on a site, you can give preferential treatment to Berlin people for some of those units. But in this case,
Mm-hmm.
if it's just a single unit, you wouldn't be able to move in that direction. So I think our feeling is that we'd work to determine what the sale price could be to keep it affordable,
Mm-hmm.
which may be somewhere around $275,000. That would mean that if we were to use $300,000, $250 from CPA and $50 from the housing partnership money,
Mm-hmm.
there might be an opportunity to recoup some money from the third party
Mm-hmm.
as they move through the process. But again, that's math we have to do. That money could come back to CPA. But, you know, we need to investigate what the opportunities are.
Mm-hmm.
Is this following kind of the same thing we've dealt with the open space, that first money that comes back and everything always has to go to CPA if there's any CPA money used?
Well, that's what we've been talking about. If in the case of the Horseshoe Pond piece, CPA spent $840,000, so we assume that the 840 comes back to us first, and if there's excess, it probably goes to free cash. And so that would be the case here too. If we were to, in this case, we're not asking for any raise and appropriate money at town meeting or free cash. We're using money that's in these funds that's come from mitigation or from CPA. So it would come back to CPA rather than going to housing partnership.
In the housing account, you mentioned that, you said it's controlled by the planning board? Is
The
that-
housing partnership money
Housing
that's
partnership?
coming from litigation, you know, mitigation that we did with Highland Commons and with Brook Lane. I don't know, we might have $250,000, $300,000 in that. We've spent probably 20 or 30
I was
over the
gonna say
years.
minimal amounts,
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Some of the money for the housing production plan that the planning board and the housing partnership are working on now, and update to the master plan section for housing is coming up. Some of that money.
So you think it's about 250 to 300,000
Yeah,
somewhere
that's
in there?
my sense.
That was going to be my question, was how much is in there?
Yeah, and again, Brook Lane was built in 2008 or 9,
Yeah, it's-
something like that.
It's
We've been
just
sitting
been
on that
sitting.
money for 12 years. If there's going to be, if 10% of the funds that come into CPA on an annual basis get dedicated to housing, and this year we're going to, the state match was 303 and our generation was 305. We got a 99% match from the state this year. Last year we got a 100% match. So, I mean, that's $60,000 a year that is available for housing, and I don't think we'd be trying to do projects every year, but certainly, if you look at our subsidized housing inventory now is somewhere north of 200 units, and let's say we've got 1,600 total housing units in town now. So we need 160 affordable units. If we've got over 200, we've got a 40-unit surplus, which means you could build an additional 400 units of housing in town before we dip below the 10% again. We don't ever want to go near that number. So if we go back to the traditional 15 to 20 houses a year that we built before 40B attacked us, then we ought to be in a situation where if we can create one affordable unit a year through a project like this, then we're halfway to where we need to be to stay at the 10%. So it seems like a positive thing to do with the money to keep 40Bs off our back, because they end up going where we don't want them because we can't work with somebody and plan it if it's a comprehensive permit. So we'd much rather be in a situation where we were building a unit here and a unit there, and then integrating them into the community. I mean, what's happened so far is they're at Northbrook, or they're on Dudley Road, or they're at Riverbridge. So that's really not integrated into the community. That's in these isolated, fairly significant developments. Whereas if we can use the CPA money, we'd be far better off. You put one in the center, you put one in South Berlin, you'd spread them around the town. So it wasn't a just stick it in the big developments.
So I just want to correct me if I'm right. 10% goes to open space recreation, 10% historical, and 10% community housing. Have I got that right?
Yep.
And then the other goes into the reserve.
Yeah, and 5% can go to administration. So we generate, we put in about 25,000 the last couple of years, and we're not spending but 2/3 of that probably. So, and that's helped us hire Maureen, who works in the assessor's office, but now she's with us 6 to 8 hours a week, and so she helped us with the update to the preservation plan. She does minutes, she sets up the meetings, she works on the agenda. She's there in the office on Wednesday afternoons for people if they want to come in and talk to someone face to face about CPA. That's proven to be a big help. And then she can integrate with June and with Kristen easily, because she's here and they're here, and she can keep everybody updated.
Where does she sit?
She's in the assessor's office.
Ah, right. Say, Tim, on that property on Carter Street, you were saying that the house is sound, could be refurbished. But then, as a local initiative, affordable sort of thing, you said with the duplex, you could give some consideration to residents of the town.
Right.
Would you consider taking that house and turning it into a duplex? Or, and with an add-on, because it's not a big house, I don't think.
Well, it isn't a big house, and it's really a single, there's an attic which you could refurbish, but you can only stand up in one part.
Yeah. No, I was
You're
thinking
familiar
about.
with it, and
Yeah.
the footprint is long but narrow, and the cellar doesn't really lend itself to conversion. So once you begin to add on, you really change the dynamic in terms of the expense that's going to go into it, and I think how much more money CPA would have to throw at it in order to make a builder look at it. Because let's say that the 2 units had to sell for, if you could add an extra, 1,000 square feet or something like that, but you got to add an additional bathroom, all those expenses, another kitchen, another bathroom, maybe bathroom and a half. The one that's there now has only got 1 bathroom, so, someone might argue there needs to be another half bath added to that. The kitchen needs to be redone in what's there now. And those are always the expensive parts. The other question is, by adding additional bedrooms, it passed Title V,
Mhm.
but additional bedrooms are gonna mess us up in terms of whether it would
Septic.
comply, and then you got a big septic too. So I mean, ideally, you try to find a way to accomplish that. I mean, the other thing that we wondered about was, would we separate 2 lots, leave the house on one, flip that, sell it to someone, a contractor, third party, who convert it, fix it up, refurbish it to a single family, but sell it as an affordable unit, and then create a second lot and flip that to somebody like Habitat and say, here's the land, there's no money. Often Habitat's looking for money from the towns as well as the land, but in this case, it would just be, here's the land and we want a duplex. And then we could be in a situation where we could give local preference to somebody. But the frontage isn't there, so then you've got to create frontage, and frontage is a road, and cha-ching, cha-ching, you know, so it's an awkward one.
Yeah, I am
Compared
familiar
to
with the
some.
setting, yeah.
Yeah.
I just like
And
to.
we don't know if it would, you know, how
Yeah.
easily is it gonna perk, and another well, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, if you've got, if you could service two buildings with the same infrastructure, the same, you know, I'm being provocative because I like to just ask questions, I don't
No,
necessarily have answers.
we've been digging through the same questions, because if for the same money you could get 3 affordable units at some point in the future, that'd be fantastic. But we haven't figured out a way to accomplish that.
Right, and I also think about it as a kind of site that could have in-law potential if you had a smaller, if you turned it into a duplex with the idea that it was a smaller footprint.
Yeah.
But you're right, to find somebody who's willing to build and do that is, could be a challenge.
Yeah.
But I very much like it as a one-story house.
No, I mean, it's gonna fit in
It's-
with the neighborhood. All those houses that are on Carter Street benefit from the acquisition of this property.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're all on little postage stamps, and now suddenly they have this land that belongs to the town that's behind
Mhm.
them. And at some point, the opportunity to connect, you know, maybe we can work with the Wiedemans about a CR on some of their property, or you know, access across it. And I think Faith might very well talk to us about the possibility of an easement across the
Right.
corner of hers that's
Right.
directly behind the curatorial storage,
Mhm.
which means you go from Carter all the way across and down into the center on a path that's not Carter Street, you know, where you take your life in your hands, so.
I'm just curious as to if it's was sold as affordable housing, what keeps it as affordable? I mean, is there
So it's
restrictions?
deed restricted, yeah.
Okay, so if they have to sell it one time, it's gotta be sold as affordable housing.
Right, and the thing that's annoyed us in the past, without a housing trust, is that, for instance, at Mosaic and Camelot, when, I can't remember which one, couldn't sell 3 of the units they had that were designated as affordable, and they just could not get anybody that would qualify. They came to the town and said, can you give us some relief? And so the 3 units got released, and we lost those. Now, if you had a housing trust, you'd be in a position where, I mean, that trust can do a lot, and they could acquire those properties. They might rent them for a period of time when the environment was right, and they had a waiting list of individuals that qualified, and someone moved out. You could, you know, sell it as a you know, privately owned property, again, at an affordable rate. And the same thing happened to us on,
Jones Road.
yeah, that's way back. Those numbers, those houses were never meant in perpetuity,
Yeah,
the
that
way
that
these
was,
others were.
yeah.
But on
It's Jones, right? Is that the road
Alden
on?
Drive has
Oh, yeah,
got
Alden,
the
yep.
duplexes, and we
Yep.
lost
Yep.
one of the duplexes there because they couldn't come up with a qualified buyer. So one of the newcomers to the center of town, Lauren, I can't remember I won't say her last name because I can't pronounce it the right way. So, but Lauren works for a firm that helps place people in affordable units. And so it's been interesting to chat with her because she's really up to speed on this. And, you know, I've learned a lot chatting with her over the last couple of weeks, just about the way we'd have to work this through the system. But we can do it, and with the housing trust in place, we'd be able to do it a lot more. Because like I said, you'd have 60,000 a year coming in, and you quite possibly could pull some out of budgeted reserve, and you could continue to pull some money out of the mitigation money that we've had for housing in the past. So there's some great opportunity, I think, for keeping ahead of that. I mean, if we could keep our subsidized housing inventory up to like 13 or 14% going forward, it'd be something we could be proud of because we're doing the right thing, and it would also mean that we'd be in control of our destiny instead of sitting around waiting for somebody else to come up with a 40B project where we don't want it. So those are the 3 projects. The 4th project is not going for funding this year, but we're going to ask the committee to consider the possibility of funding in the future. The Central Mass Regional Planning Commission has gotten a grant to hire a housing coordinator. They're looking for 4 or 5 towns that would be interested in participating. And the coordinator would be available to us for 4 or 5 hours a week. The first year would be no cost. The second and third year would be somewhere in the $15,000 or $16,000 range per year. Now you look at that number and you say, you know, 4 or 5 hours at $16,000 or $15,000 seems pretty significant, because if you do the math, you end up with a fairly significant salary. But the individual's going to get paid somewhere around $65,000 or $70,000. Because the commission ends up with significant indirect costs, and they'll pick up the benefits as well, they end up with this larger number. So the committee, the CPA committee, said we need to hear about that number a little more clearly before we're confident we want to support this. And they're not, like I said, they're not voting to have it on the warrant this year, but for Central Mass's benefit, because they've got this 1-year grant where you get the first year for free, it seemed appropriate for us to be able to say we'd commit to a 3-year package and commit to engaging you for the second 2 years. That, you know, we might take again some money out of CPA from housing and take some money out of the housing partnerships fund that is there as well. So it might be 20,000 from CPA and 8 or 10 from the housing partnership. But that would be in fiscal 25 and 6. Am I right?
I don't think so.
It's not this year, but we wanted everybody to know that that's something we're thinking about. And again, that would give the Housing Trust a significant amount of backup as they generate bylaws and procedures and protocol and begin to experiment with some of these options. I mean, there's things like rental assistance during depressed times like COVID, or first-time home buyer assistance to help people get into that first house. There's sometimes assistance to elderly to help retrofit their homes so they can stay in them rather than having to move out because they're not accommodating that way. So there's a tremendous number of good programs we can use the CPA money for, and the Housing Trust could do that. But we'd speed up their learning curve significantly if we had this housing coordinator around to help them for the first 3 years.
So Tim, would that housing coordinator, those second 2 years, would that be funded out of CPA administrative expense?
No.
Administrative bucket, where would it come from?
It would come out of housing still,
Would still be in the housing sector of the,
yeah.
and not administrative.
No, the administrative part is for our administrative needs.
Okay.
And towns hire housing, I mean, they end up
Yeah.
getting assistance through CPA
Yeah.
for working with their housing trusts and their partnerships and stuff. And so that's the avenue we pursue. The other thing that Central Mass is doing is that District Local Technical Assistance is funds that come to Central Mass Regional Planning from the state, and then communities propose projects that then we've got about $275,000 that we can spend on an annual basis. But the wrinkle this year is that they've given us an additional $150,000, and I talked to Kristen about this today. It's earmarked for helping towns apply for federal and state grants. And so if we were to say, boy, there's some opportunities here to leverage CPA money to match some sort of grant that we might get, like we did with the municipal vulnerability preparedness grant that they, whatever, to Horseshoe Pond. In the same way, the Historical Commission is going to match the money that they've gotten so far to apply for a state historical commission grant. You could do the same thing with housing, and using Central Mass to help us apply for those funds, because they know on the radar for them are all these grants, and Kristen's got a good working relationship with the folks at CMRPC, so they're more than happy to assist us. And now they've got this extra kitty of money that they have to expend over the next 18 months. So that'll be a real positive opportunity too.
I just want to maybe backtrack a few things, make sure I got things correct. So the latest on the CPA money is, you said it was 99% match. What was the exact numbers again? It was like 308,000?
So 305 was what we generated. We generated 305,849, and the state matched 303,629.
Can you say the first number again? 305?
849. So that's the most we've generated. And we've also got some additional money that we haven't applied to those 10% accounts from previous years. There's that extra 30,000 floating around.
Oh, that we have to reapply.
Right.
Yeah.
So there may be another 10 for each one of the three
Yep.
that has to get fitted in.
Yep.
See, what happens is we estimate for the coming year what the revenue is going to be, but if it exceeds that, what we voted on at town meeting is based on the estimate. So we estimated 281
Yeah.
for this year, so we put 200. We put
No, we were short.
we had 281 plus we got 281 from the state, so we ended up with 562.
Yeah.
We need
And
this
we
on the
put
spreadsheet.
56 from
Yeah.
that
You need to
into
request
each one
that.
of the accounts. But we've generated 303, and that means that there's actually more revenue.
Well, you generated 305 and matched 303.
So we've generated more than we put into the 10%. So by rights, we're supposed to go back and,
Yeah, we're gonna have to do it twice
Readjust,
now.
right?
yeah, and we don't think we gotta go to town meeting for that. We think that's something June can just do.
No, if it's immaterial, I can just do.
10% 's immaterial,
but I thought
right?
30 wasn't immaterial, so, yeah, it's got to affect.
So there'll be an article on the warrant that,
Is there any way you can put this on a spreadsheet? Like,
Don't make it.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, we all need to see that because it's really hard trying to follow you
well, the
and,
good news is that it's not raise and appropriate, it's, we want you to be aware. Yeah, we've got.
well, I'm not just thinking of us sitting here, I'm thinking
Yes.
about the townspeople.
Well, in the preservation plan that we do have to update on an annual basis, which is on our website.
I just read the whole thing while you were talking.
You can go into the plan and you'll see you'll see these figures, which shows you what we generated from the state and what we generated.
But I can only find 2021. I can't find,
Oh, they're there, you keep looking. And then we show all the projects that we've supported and which funds that we've got, because that's the
I'm gonna go
problem
back
that
and look.
June has to face. Thank God June is willing to do this, but, I mean, there's 5 different buckets, 6 different buckets, actually, because you've got administrative as well. And then some money continues to come in late, and so she has to add that, and then we generate more revenue than we anticipated, so she has to make adjustments for that. So it's a lot of work.
Is
Give
the
me a
state,
little
is the state
insight.
match on a date certain? Do we kind of know
Usually
in
it's
advance?
November 15th or so.
Yeah.
And this year, the state match initially was 68%, but, because revenue from
Oh,
transactions
yes.
was less,
Yeah.
and then the legislature voted an extra 20 million, and we ended up picking another 68,000 out of that, which, so we went from 237 or something like that with the extra 68 to get
I
it.
don't see that. It's not on here.
But that's all. The important thing is, there were only, I think there were 14 or 15 towns last year that got 100%, and this year there were about the same number that got 100, or, I mean, we were 99.3 or something like that. So basically, we're 100 again. So because we're small and we're 3%, we do very well. I mean, you gotta spend money to make money, and we're getting a great match from the state. Because you compare what we get to what a lot of the towns around get, and even towns that are substantially larger don't get as much as we do in the state match, because they're only at 1%, for instance. So-
Yeah, I think Boylston went in at 1, didn't they?
Yeah. And Worcester's jumped in now.
Yes.
Which will be that'll put a drain on, there's 190-something communities now, so the numbers are increasing. So the draw is bigger, so the likelihood of getting the 100% is
Yeah.
less and less each year, I would think, but still, it's significant.
Another question, and this is, we have conservation coming into duplicating probably the question here, but the horseshoe, what's it called, the Horseshoe Pond land, is that what's the new name for it? I know at town meeting
I
we
don't know
were
what,
referring it,
I call it horseshoe, but I don't know what.
we were referring to a different name.
Mount Pisgah?
Well, adjacent to, I forget the,
It was Linden Street, Lyman
McGrail?
Street.
yeah, there was all different, I think that was one of them.
McGrail.
The owner's name.
I think Sudbury was calling it the Horseshoe Pond.
Yeah, I like horseshoe.
Yep.
I mean, it was Dudley Pond too, I think, on a lot of the maps, but
Yeah.
it's a horseshoe shape, so why not call it that?
So the grant we got to, what percentage of the grant was it for the overall cost? Do we know what the grant,
It was either 75 or 85%, I think.
75 or 85? Okay.
Yeah, it was one of those.
Yeah, if it's 850,000, let's say we spent 1.2, was it?
Yeah.
Wasn't 1.3, it was
It was 125.
It was supposed to be
something like that.
1.25, but
Yeah.
the other thing is that right now, Sudbury Valley has applied for the check to come to the town, but I think the state is saying, because there was a period where Sudbury Valley was using its money before they got our money, and there's interest costs, those might very well be reimbursable as part of this, so there may be a larger amount of money that we get back from the state than we first anticipated. So that's what's delaying the settlement right now. So we might very well find that it's a little bit above what, I don't know how much.
Yeah, the interest.
Oh,
paid
Tim,
though
I was-
wasn't much.
No, I can't imagine.
What was the total CPA money that was used for that project?
840.
840, and the grant is 850, possibly.
Yeah, I think it's 856 or
The
something.
reimbursement part of it, I haven't seen.
Tim, I think it was printed at 1.25 million, but now I've got my handwritten notes says 1.15 million. Does that sound right?
It changed because there were donations that came in,
That's what it was.
and that lowered the
Mhm.
price that
Yeah.
we needed to pay.
Yeah.
Because they were trying to capture 50,000 in donations, and I think they accomplished that.
Uh-huh.
Maybe surpassed it, so.
Right, at the end, it was what, 100,000 free cash, do we recall? That was what the-
Was it 100 or was it 50?
That's what I'm trying to
I think
remember.
we
is-
cut it back.
It was lowered because they had,
Because it came up with more
Right here,
money
Scott.
as
Here.
the donation.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, it was 50K.
Subject to my
yes,
notes, right?
yes.
But I think I think my pencil marks are the correct.
Okay, yeah, it was
Yeah.
halved. I couldn't remember what the halved from the starting point. So it was halved from 100,000 to 50,000.
And we had these appropriations from open space and then that from the general funds. 490 was general.
Yeah, 490 came out of CPA the first year, and then the 350 came out the second year. 490 came out of the, it wasn't even balanced reserve.
I don't know if you can pull.
It was
that.
budgeted reserve.
Yeah, there was.
It's called budgeted reserve, right? 283.
283 came out of budgeted reserve last year.
Carolyn.
That's actually good timing.
Thank you.
Don't trip.
So, does that help?
Yes.
Don't you dare.
You'd think I'd have it memorized, you know?
Right? Yeah, conservation was a little rowdy tonight, so. Well, this group will calm you right down. Oh, God.
I bragged about all the wonderful things you've been doing. But, uh-oh,
That worked.
I know, it hasn't been working. I don't know what's going on.
it went to sleep.
Yes. Well, I unplugged it initially for a minute because I had to go and look at an old budget that wasn't accurate entirely yet, so I didn't want that on camera. So-
Gotcha.
So that's what I know.
That's your story and you're sticking to it? Is that what you're telling
For
us?
today, anyway, yeah. After I meet with June, who knows?
Could be a whole new story.
If we determine that we don't have, I mean, what we're looking at is 4, 5, 50, well, 350, 450, 545. So we're looking at 545,000 from CPA. And June may very well say, you've only got, 495 or something like that, but I'm hoping I can convince her that we've got more than that.
I know she works in pretty hard numbers.
You have math.
I have
She
math.
has math.
I have
She
math,
always
and she has
counter
math.
Tim's
Right.
way more creative than I am.
It depends, I mean, what, the figure that we've got, that we're playing with, the 500 is all money that's come in prior to this year. And so we're collecting money now. The committee's feeling has always been, as much as possible, we're only gonna spend money that we've got. And some towns expend anticipated revenue, like you do in a regular town budget, which we really don't wanna do that. Now, we've done that a little bit, because we pulled some out of the balance reserve for '23 last year.
And you voted for money this year, 23.
Yeah,
Yeah, so.
so, and it was like 11,000 and,
That was on the historical project, right?
yeah, and the tennis courts too, I think.
Yeah.
So we pulled a little from '23 out of open space and a little for historic. But historic's not looking for anything this year. And that's, the opportunity to move into the housing realm is, we're excited about,
Yes.
big time.
Yeah, conservation just approved
Did they?
conservation
Good.
funds being expended that way.
The one thing we talked to James Holyoke about, who's representing the seller for the Carter Street thing, is that the committee, if we vote to support the article and take it to town meeting, would be helpful in assuring the owner that we're serious. But because this is sort of outside the normal budget stream, we thought that if we do go forward with the article, because we're going to meet in 2 weeks and vote, if it goes on the warrant, we might ask that the Finance Committee and Capital Planning and the Select Board look at this more seriously sooner than you would the whole budget. And if you felt comfortable about endorsing it, that we could say to the owners, the 3 big committees that need to support this are supportive, and as a result, we really feel good about going to town meeting with it. And that way, their willingness to wait for us to get through town meeting. I mean, because they...
Make them a little more comfortable, because we can't sign a PNS, we can't give them a written offer with no funding.
Right.
And we can't have funding until town meeting, but they definitely want to see the town end up with this property. That is the property owner's wish.
Right.
So you could let them know that it's being discussed, and if there's support, behind it from different boards and committees.
And that would be far sooner than you'd normally endorse a project, but again, because this is, the funding source is a little different than what normally happens, and it's a revenue stream that's a little different. We'd hope that maybe the 3 groups could evaluate that, so that might be something we'd come back to you and...
I actually have a quick question. The CPA funding, that is the CPA committee is responsible for determining it, so.
Can't be voted on unless we bring the article to the town meeting.
And then the housing trust, that is, the housing trust is
So
in
the
charge
only
of-
way the housing trust would get money would be for, well, if it's CPA money, is for the CPA committee to recommend an article on the warrant that then would be voted by the town. There are towns that automatically give the 10% to their housing trust. But our advice from the consortium's consultants is don't go down that road, because your ability to account for that money begins to disappear, and the town meeting's will is negated because you just give it to the housing trust and they can apply it for all sorts of projects, which we'd just as soon be in a situation where they had to come to town meeting, explain what they were going to do with the money, and then it got voted on an annual basis. So it's far more transparent that way as far as we're concerned. So.
I have a question on, there is it's in the capital planning committee budget from historical, that request for $130,000, and in there they've listed it to come from community preservation funding for FY24.
They have no intent of asking for any additional money beyond what they've got right now. They've got $200,000. They're moving forward. The house is empty. They've got engineering studies they've got a preliminary engineering study done that's given them multiple options as to how they might proceed. They're working with an architect to talk about directions to go. They're evaluating in their own minds the uses that they might want to put the house to, which will dictate the ways in which they want to refurbish it. Because obviously, if it was, in Concord and was Hancock's Tavern, you'd probably say, we're not going to touch a thing, we're going to restore the whole place. This is a house that got built over multiple generations, and some of it's 20th century practically. If it's going to be a unit that's used for teaching purposes and collection display, you can restore it in a different fashion, and so the decisions they make about what to do will be dictated by that. So they're coming at it from a number of different directions right now, but it's empty, and they've got the engineering work done, and with a little more engineering work, they'll be able to explain in their grant proposal to Mass Historical exactly what they might want to match. That's a match instead of a grant, so they'd be looking for, I think June and Janet were on a Zoom meeting today with Mass Historical about a workshop that, talked about all the preliminary steps you need to go through.
All right, so I am completely confused by what we have on the capital planning stuff, because it says FY '24. Of course, it has a date prepared of October 31st of 2022. So it would be
What are you
actually,
looking at,
this
Scott?
is under the capital planning
Yep,
request, and this is for the historical. Can you go into
I
that?
can.
Bring that up?
Well, Tim and I were talking the other day about capital planning likes to get all of their ducks in a row early,
Right, yes.
mid-fall.
And bring
Where
up the
for-
spreadsheet.
For CPA, we wouldn't decide what to recommend for warrant until January, and things can change in between that time. Like this project on Carter Street, we didn't talk to capital planning in October because we didn't know about it in October. So, that they may have come to talk to you guys or to capital planning as a just in case, and then decided not to move forward.
Yeah, that may have been part of the logistical numbers that they were projecting back even a year and a half ago that got trickled along and carried because they weren't sure what the status of CPA was going to be at that point either. So, but I've talked to June and not this June, but the other June Miller, and said, there's discussion that you're looking for 130,000 out of some source this year, and you're not. And she said, no, we're not. So I said, okay,
Okay, so this is something we can
you can erase.
ignore. Okay.
We'll talk to capital about to update them, maybe.
So what we said I talked to Anna for a while the other day, and we're streamlining our application process, but what we're suggesting to people now is that their applications have to be in our hands by November 1st if they want to be considered for the annual town meeting. And of course, there's going to be situations like we've said with Carter Street where you can't hold within those parameters. But that way, we would at least be able to say to capital planning in early November, close to when their deadline is, that there are projects that have come to us that are looking for these funds. And so capital planning would be aware. So again, if there was complementary money from some other source in town, it would be available for discussion right up front, starting in November. And no one would be coming in, like I said in the beginning, looking for additional money from the town to double dip essentially on capital planning in the town's budget.
On my capital planning hot sheet that I just got from Eloise, it says, received 1/12/2023, Community Preservation Committee, Housing Coordinator, employ CMRPC, $15,000, Open Space Housing, one house, one duplex, $350,000, and Recreation Committee Shade Pavilion, $123,900.
Right.
Is that hot off the press? Have I got, no.
No. So,
So that's wrong?
yeah,
Ugh,
so what we said.
so confused.
What we said to the rec committee was, your request for 123 or 124 is
Oh.
not gonna allow you to build the building.
It's 150, excuse me, updated.
Right.
Sorry.
So we said, we want
Sorry.
you to think more seriously about a structure that has more IP, and they said it. And then the housing portion is, I mean, the Carter Street piece is 350 out of CPA, 100 from open space, and the 250 from housing, which is what she's saying there, I think. Yeah, so we're in alignment that way.
Okay. I'm sorry, she's got the same piece of, she's got, I thought they were the same, but when I flipped it over, I saw 150 for the Shade Pavilion.
All right, any more questions for CPA?
Good luck. Hire them out, so I think we'll be all set.
Want to stick around just in case.
No, I'm like, MJ, I'm out of here.
You're gonna miss the good part, Tim, you know?
Huh? I haven't upset June yet, that's what's important.
That is very-
And
yes.
so, maybe,
You've made me a little anxious. You haven't angered me. We're good.
I mean, what we've said to all the proponents is if we don't have the money, then all these projects can't move forward. And I think as a committee, we feel that there's a high priority on the Carter Street site, and we've delayed the fence for a long time. So those two would be number 1 and 2, and the pavilion would be number 3. So if there had to be some delay, it would probably be on the pavilion, but our hope is that
What
all the
I'm
money-
really
money's there.
confused about, and maybe it's just me being tired, is that you're only, I don't mean only spending, but you have 45,000, 150,000, and 400,000. So that's 4, 5, 50. We're gonna round up the 45, so that's 6, right?
Yeah, but take off 50 from the 400, because it's not a full 400.
Let's just say it's 6 to begin with. I don't understand where you're getting back 840, why there's a shortfall.
Because.
That's
it
where
may
I'm
not-
confused.
It may not be available. June may say, you can't have this till we certify it.
Yeah, it's not in hand
But-
yet.
So, in talking to Stuart, he said, can I remember the quote? He was talking to somebody, and I was asking some of the similar questions. And the outcome was, only in Massachusetts can you spend money you don't have, but you can't spend money you already have. And he said, I said, that's the situation I feel like I'm in. And he said, yep, that's right.
So this 305,849, which is this
We can go to
year.
town meeting and vote on estimated amounts of money from fiscal '24 for CPA. We can do that.
Yeah, I understand.
And we don't have that money. But because the 850 comes back and it's not certified, we have it, but we
Can't spend it. I understand that, but you also have the 305,849 and the 303,629 that you just talked about.
Right.
Where does that money sit? Still not being able to spend it?
Well, some of it we dipped into already, but that's.
See, that's why I need the spreadsheet, because I can't follow all these numbers in my
The spreadsheet
head.
doesn't even help. It's CPA, the math for CPA is maddening.
Yeah.
But if I'm
Because
confused
they-
after listening to this, how do you think people at town meeting are going to be?
Well-
And then they have to vote, and then I just want it all clarified
Because-
before we get there.
June will say, don't worry, the money's there if we have an article in the warrant. Because at that point, we'll know how much is in each one of these pots. But right now, we don't know exactly what's there. Because we don't have a certified number from this past year.
But also it sounds like you have a priority plan,
Well,
so
we
if
have-
it looks like you have a
We have a certified
shortfall.
number from last year, it's just right
Now.
now, what you have is minimal.
Right.
Mhm.
So what is the certified number from last
I
year?
don't know off the top of my head, I didn't know we were gonna discuss this
Oh,
tonight.
sorry. That's why they have emails, you can let us know.
But the cycle of when the money is awarded, the fiscal year, the CPA in order to recommend for town meeting, they're all at odds with each other. And it makes it, you should, poor Julie Lee, she sits there at meetings and she's like this, and she's like, Tim, do we have the money or not? When are we gonna know, do we have the money or not? And he's like, I don't know.
I mean, we've raised $1.6 million and we've spent $1.1 million, so theoretically, there's some money floating around that's available that we have in hand. and ought to be able to expend this cycle, and that's why we've looked at this 545 number. If we have to reduce it to 400, then, you know, we've got to reduce it to 400, but I'm pretty confident we've got 4, because we just didn't take that much out of this past year's pocket when we had the town meeting last night,
Janet, it's
All
not
right.
bad.
Huh?
It's not bad. Go back and look at last year's warrant on the
Oh,
historical.
yeah, no,
It's not
I,
bad. You just have to line up the numbers. You need an Excel sheet, but.
yeah, I need
Once
an
you
Excel,
do it-
that's all I need is an,
once you do that,
I
you're all
followed
set.
it, it just, I think that there's going to be a lot of other people that are gonna have these questions, and if it's on one Excel sheet, it's gonna be much easier to look at, rather than Tim throwing all these numbers off at you and us writing them down and trying to figure it out.
This year's going to be fairly simple, though, because it'll be X amount from housing, X amount from open space, and nothing from historical, so, and then some will come out of the budgeted reserve, so. But it won't be as complex as last year's with the open space horseshoe pond one. I mean, that had all those moving parts, so this'll be a lot easier.
That was another question. Is that the official name, Horseshoe Pond, or what do we call it? That is now?
That.
What were we
that-
calling it at town meeting? Do you recall?
I think we were at Horseshoe Pond by town meeting also.
No, it was the owner's name, and I
Was it
cannot.
the Lohr
Lohr.
property? Yeah.
The Lohr property.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then it was suggested at
There was,
one point that it would be called
McGrail?
McGrail Farm. And then some people didn't like the fact that the McGrails are the reason that the town didn't end up with the property to begin with. And then somebody wanted to call it the Lyman School property, and then there was some negative connotation about Lyman School, so we ended up at Horseshoe Pond.
So Scott, in the warrant, it was called 3 parcels of land near the juncture of.
Yeah, I know that's how it was described, but yet people were using
Well, yeah, the parcel numbers
names.
are here, parcel 41, 42, the assessor's map, the parcel 6.
By Linden and Lyman.
Right,
It's the way
the
these
corner of
wordings, and it's
Linden,
like, okay,
Linden
come on.
and Lyman, yeah.
Yeah. Or else put something up there that says also known as, and maybe 3 or 4 different previous
Exactly.
names.
Yeah, but it is officially part of the Mount Pisgah Conservation Area. But it is the Horseshoe Pond acquisition.
All right, are we ready to let Tim go?
Yep.
Right.
The only
Yeah.
thing, promise is to learn Excel and bring us a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
We'll be looking at your website.
Don't
Just talk to
Just say
James,
no.
he'll help you.
Don't do it, don't do it.
I was gonna say, if you need a spreadsheet, we can.
I can send you the ones that June sends me. Holy mackerel. I mean, you know what June's spreadsheets look like, so,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, we like them.
Well, the CPA
Not
one
this
is.
one, this
what-
one
What do I
really
get? I get 30
sucks.
pages.
Well, it's quite a few.
Yeah.
Not in 30, there's
Oh,
not in
you're
30.
talking about the
maybe
Vadar
only-
printouts?
I got the printout, I was looking at it the other day, and it was just all these zeros and then little numbers, and, because every different sort of addition that comes in, and, yeah, so I can send you that one. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night, Farmer Tim.
I got your numbers, it was okay. They're all, yeah, it's all okay.
We'll send you some good stuff.
Thank you, Tim.
How come you're hiding over here? We could have been talking about you.
Okay.
I didn't know.
Ready
She does it all the
for,
time.
ready for conservation. So I think the main topic here is the supplemental request, but I don't know if there's anything you want to mention before that.
Otherwise, it's just your 2.5%
Right.
personnel increase, I believe.
Correct.
So I can go down to the supplemental if you would like.
I think this is my first time doing I have staff budget, so if I did something wrong, bear with me.
I can scroll up one, right? It kind of shows the numbers too.
Oh,
Yeah, right
well,
there.
right,
it
it's,
starts.
ty-
Yeah,
it's,
So-
it's
or do-
typed up above if you want.
Yeah,
Oh.
take
Typed
the,
up.
take the typed one.
Yeah.
because June did send back my homework on the handwritten one.
So this doesn't include the supplemental?
Right, so this is what you're, right now, you have an employee for 8 hours a week.
Correct.
Thank you. It's just outside of what, yeah.
Yeah, I know, I've got the wrong glasses
Yep.
on too.
Oh, can I turn this a little? Is that helpful?
Yes, that's a little more helpful,
All
yes. Okay.
Can you guys all still
Yeah.
see it?
I still
Okay.
can't.
I have it.
Okay.
All set on that?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
So, here we go. Okay.
All right, so Maddie has been invaluable. Like, I'm not really sure if you just kind of want me to talk about why I would like her to have 4 additional hours. I can do that, other than what we wrote. She's just been amazing. If I have a new job, I have to work 9 to 5 now. Ugh. I don't even know how people do this. But, you know, my last job, I got out of work at 3 o'clock 3 days a week, and I was able to do more for conservation. And the CPA also takes up some time. She did the whole MVP grant. You know, I mean, she got the town $874,000 back. Louise has been our minute taker, and a couple months, well, probably the last 6 months, she has been expressing her desire to no longer have that be her job. So Maddie has started taking it on, but if anybody who's done minutes know it takes hours, and you know that on the weeks that we meet, that's half of her time. It's half of her 8 hours right there, or a third of her 8 hours.
You meet, what, bi-weekly or twice a month?
Yep, same nights you guys do.
Well, ours is really different over the course of the year.
That's
right?
true, yeah.
So,
No,
but throughout the year, you're bi-weekly?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep. No, not, actually, that's not accurate.
twice a month?
Twice a month.
Okay.
First and third
Okay.
Wednesday, yeah.
So typically 24 meetings if everything,
Yep.
nothing canceled, okay. So you said she
So-
takes up half the time, so basically there are 8 hours a week. If there's a meeting that week, it's like half the time is spent just on minutes.
Just working on the minutes, right?
Okay.
Because, you know, I mean, the minutes, the minutes for conservation have to include very detailed, if we have a hearing, it has to include very detailed representation of what happened at the meeting, and, you know, it can't just be bullet points, it's more involved. And as much as I hate the recorded meetings, it makes it so much easier to do minutes. But then you go back and you're watching the meeting again, and you're stopping and starting, and you know, for a 2.5 hour meeting, the 3 or 4 hours worth of note taking, and plus she's currently taking MACC classes. So everybody know what MACC, Mass Association of Conservation Commissioners. I am currently, to date, the only person who has been certified by the MACC in history of Berlin. But Maddie is taking classes so that she can get her certification as well. And there's all kinds of, I mean, the amount of educational opportunities that are available are, I mean, we get emails all the time about different things that could be done. And, you know, the more she learns, the more valuable she becomes for the town.
Is this something she's doing on her own, or something that this is part of her hours, is doing
It's part of
those
her
train-
hours,
oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I did it on my own because I volunteer anyway.
She also helps you though with wetland stuff too, right?
Yep. Yeah, she helps, so part of the training is learning about the Wetlands Protection Act and how to navigate that, and so that's all, how to read plans, how to make decisions about filings that, about things that have happened or that come before us, and
So how many hours does she need for the classes per year?
each class, I believe, is 2 hours long.
But is she doing 2 classes a year or 6 classes a year? I mean,
Oh, it's more than, so you need 8 classes, I believe it's 12 classes total. There's 8 fundamentals that everybody takes, and then there are 4 additional electives, if you will.
are these online or does she have to go in person?
They are online now, yep.
And how far is she with completing those?
She has taken 3 of them so far.
Okay.
Because they're not offered, they're offered sporadically, so,
So is that a total of 24 hours then you're saying if it's 12 classes that she needs?
Yep.
Okay.
and then there's, training on how to write grants, and there's, like I said, the opportunities are there.
Like the
There's-
grant training, is that outside of those 12 classes? You're saying that?
Yes.
Those are additional?
Yeah, there's, so the world of environmentalism is quite organized in some ways. There's a group that meets over in Hudson that's called OARS, which is, I don't remember what the O is, but it's the Assabet River Society, but it's basically, we're part of the Suasco watershed, and this organization focuses on the Assabet River. Louise and I joined and went to a couple of meetings, but they always just met at times that I couldn't go, and but there's all kinds of other networking that we can do and work with, just like we work with Central Mass Regional Planning. There are environmental groups like that we have the opportunity to work with if we had somebody to do that.
So right now, it's like, how are you like managing her time, or like understanding what, the hours that she submits, what she's doing, or how do you track that?
We communicate pretty much daily, either through email or text, and she, gives me her, I've been working on this, I've been working on that, and I mean, I don't timestamp her. It is an honor system.
Okay, and is there anything is there anything specific that you have like to be laid out for her if you had this additional 4 hours? I mean, additional classes, or the fact that she took on the minutes and now she's skipping other things, or what's your, something specific?
I'm sure, I hadn't really thought about that. I could think of that though, and I could definitely come up with a specific path, of things that I would like her to do for us.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to have if you could come up with some general path and then just be able to track it
Sure.
through the year to understand, were you getting what you expected from this?
Right,
Does she have a job description?
yes.
Because this was just created last.
In September, maybe, August?
Yeah, so this is.
It wasn't at town meeting she didn't have one, because I asked. I don't think-
It went through personnel. It was approved by personnel before it was advertised. And I was gonna
Which
say-
town meeting?
Not this one, but the other one, they
There
said,
wasn't,
right.
that
Right?
job didn't exist.
I think you're confusing
She was
because.
working before it was on
I'm
the budget.
confused.
Correct.
Oh,
So-
okay,
So I don't know
maybe
who
that's,
was, I don't know who was paying her when she started,
We were.
but it wasn't through the
We-
town.
oh, maybe
So-
that's
so
why I'm so
Remember
confused.
Johnny, he
Okay.
quit.
I worked with
And-
him on the job description and try to get it in a
Right,
form that
exactly.
was- yeah.
So John.
But she was working before we had
Okay,
anything to do with
all right, I
it.
knew there
Yeah,
was
and
that.
that's why you're having the disconnect.
All right, thank
And
you.
I don't know who finalized the job description, but I assume Margaret somewhere.
Right, Margaret and I worked together to
Yeah.
finalize it.
Yeah, this is actually the first year.
This is the first year that it's
23 is
officially in the
first
budget.
Where it was in
Yeah.
the budget before
Yeah.
that,
Okay.
it was coming out of wetlands
Correct.
and open space if needed.
Right,
They need for that.
yep.
If I may add something too, I will say, I'm almost at month 5, believe it or not. Very excited about
Cool.
that. It's been a fun ride and lots of adventures. I have noticed, and I've said this since the beginning, that planning, land use, and that includes conservation, has been an area that I have seen the largest gap that we have here. With specific regard to conservation, I think there's a huge focus in this community on preserving land, which is wonderful. I think you need to have someone who is trained that can do that outside of solely a volunteer organization. And I think part of the role of the town administrator is to take a comprehensive approach look at staffing and say, where are our staffing gaps, and can we always rely on volunteers, because we ask a lot of you all and we're very grateful for it, but at some point we need to have that in-house capacity as well. People get busy, people have jobs and lives, and can't have you be the only one trained, and God forbid you just decide you're going to go to Florida for the rest of your life or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's one thing Tim Wheeler and I have had a lot of conversations about. It would be, I'm used to having a town planner who can kind of oversee and shepherd a lot of these types of projects, and Maddie is filling that role on the conservation side, like you said, the grant project for SVT. I think there are a lot of grant opportunities out there that, given some more time, she could certainly look into. It's something we can discuss, but I would love to be able to maybe work with conservation a little bit on some of your plans for, staffing
That would
and
be
kind of where
wonderful.
you'd like to go
Yeah.
for, because I have some ideas.
That's awesome. Because again,
'Cause I see the need, and I'd like to be helpful if
That would
I
be
can
great.
be.
Yep.
Because it's a position that is highly specialized and has to be trained and certified. A lot of towns do it with a town planner that also has the conservation certification, but if not, they have an agent. And a lot of towns have one that is literally just specially trained and does just this, so.
Yeah, Kristen, when John Aney came in, I was fully supporting. We had no money to do it at the time, and his job description needed a lot of work. It was,
Sure.
I'm not going to tell you what it was. But my question, where we sit today with Maddie, her reporting relationship substantively, administratively, how does it run?
So she reports to the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
I mean, she falls under the Personnel Committee, but she is not a direct report to the town administrator or the select board.
Okay. Is that appropriate?
That's a
Sorry,
larger
you
conversation.
can just think about that question.
Yeah, no,
Think
no,
about
it's a larger conversation, and I will say this, it's something that when I look at long-term staffing planning, as you move into a town administrator form of government, and now you're in your 4th year of having a TA form of government, the ultimate goal would be to have less supervision by volunteer boards and committees of employees for a wide variety of reasons, which, we could spend all night getting into. But I would like to work going forward with some of these boards and committees just on the HR side, that's the best, fastest, and most detailed, complicated example I can give. You have, boards and committees supervising volunteers that may not have an HR background, and you can run into issues with that. I also think it places a huge burden on volunteers, again.
Well, that's one of the reasons I asked about the 2 categories, the substantive nature of the work and as opposed to the administrative nature of it, which you really need that professional HR piece. One of the reasons I supported John Aney's request several years ago was that I thought we needed a professional presence within the whole conservation activities in town. I think there was too much, it was way too much ad hoc and not enough, here's the rules and this is how you act under them.
Yep.
And so
it is very
I was
prescribed.
welcoming that kind of change, and I think it's money well spent in the town because these topics can be quite, as they come up in land use, they can be quite difficult topics.
They're
So-
onerous, and I'm not going to pretend to be a land use expert. I'm not. That's not
And
part
legal
of my job.
legal expense and money that goes in with it.
It
So it needs to be
does.
done right. Town needs to do it right.
Absolutely. And
So-
when you don't have those roles filled, what you're doing is you are expending extra funds reaching out to legal or,
Right.
taxing volunteers or, it's a challenge.
Yep.
Yeah, well, actually, to this, because Maddie's coming in as an expert in her area, and you do have her doing administrative work, and didn't you bring this up recently about having a floater in town hall if some of that more administrative work, could somebody else do that so that she would stay freed up to do the more technical aspects of conservation? Or is the minute taking that you were describing, does it actually require a higher level of
The minute
knowledge?
taking doesn't, but,
Because as you move forward, as you're doing more work,
right, with the filing of the documents, the forms and everything, it's, I think a competent admin person could figure it out, but it is more specialized.
And the minutes, I would argue too, if you don't understand the terminology, you can type them verbatim, but you may not get the general gist of what's going on. It is a bit challenging.
Right.
It's also really time consuming too.
Yes.
Because You've been here long enough where it's really increased as far as the
Oh,
amount
the
of
amount of work
research
that
and
the commission.
documentation
Absolutely.
and so there's a lot more that,
yeah.
like you said now, you have a real job.
Yeah.
So as far as being able to
That's
come
gonna be
in,
changed.
you
It's
know,
not a
day in,
temporary
day out
position.
to do
I'm
stuff
confused
too.
about that.
Right, right.
well,
And the other thing about Maddie is that she is a certified arborist.
Go
and
back
she-
to that job description, but you've moved, I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It says temporary, it's not temporary. That's where I'm
It
confused.
was when it.
I know, so that's why I'm asking, where is the official job description? That's the temporary one from 2021. There should be a final one from 2022.
Well, so the one that and Mary, correct me if I'm wrong about this, the one that you and John were working on was for a full 20-hour a week,
yeah, that
has an office in the building person. And that
was 2 years ago, wasn't it?
was 2 years ago. And
Okay.
and that job description cannot be Maddie's at 8 hours a week.
No,
Which is why the temporary one was.
So that's why I'm thinking there's two floating around.
Well,
Well,
I
there's
don't think the one
official.
that John and I were working on ever concluded in its
I agree.
in its final form.
But I think you need to remove temporary at best.
Well, I think
Janet,
originally it was
she was
started
brought
to
in
see what
as a
you
temporary
actually
because of the
needed,
way it
what
was
worked.
funded.
And I think
It was
gonna
done
be-
unofficially. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it was necessarily like a permanent position in the budget initially, and I see what you're saying, Janet. I don't know that the job function has changed. When I'm looking at this seems very typical of what I would expect a conservation job description to be. I mean, you've got wetland protection bolded, that's, a good start
Oh,
right
no, they
there.
did a
But-
lot of work on this.
Yeah.
Yep. But it's something I can definitely bring up. Personnel's going to meet next week, and I can review it with them.
Maybe review and add some other things if you
But I
want to do
thought,
it.
well, I thought the reason, because you needed the help, and the only way to do it outside of town meeting and outside of the budget was to use your own funds
Correct,
and create the job. And you did that last year.
correct.
So,
This year.
This year.
This is the first year that it's actually been in the budget.
no, when she came on,
In
it was
22.
outside of the budget.
Correct.
And now
It's in the
In
budget.
you're in the budget
Correct.
Right.
Yep,
It's in for 8 hours.
for 8 hours.
and you need more time, so you're asking for more time, but you are in the budget. And I remember seeing the job description when she came in temporarily, so.
And I might add is that originally it was, you had talked about doing it between 8 and 12 hours originally.
Yeah,
Correct.
And it was discussed with, when Margaret was here, was that we'll give it a shot at 8. If you needed extra, you can take that out of wetlands or open space, I think is, because we weren't sure if we were really gonna need the full 12 until you actually had somebody here.
mhm.
So I think that's where this year here, you're saying that, you know, it's a definite, you're gonna. need
Right,
the
so,
12.
right, that the additional hours would come out of our funds back before.
Right.
But not
Right.
moving forward.
Because I mean, the wetlands funds can be used to offset it, but it has to be for that only.
Right,
And it can't be worked on, you know, any of the other grants or whatever.
right,
Mhm.
right.
That's consistent with what I remember. I could go back and look at a few notes from last year on it, but
Mhm.
the other thing is there was nothing in the budget prior to last year, and so this was the first instance of looking at it. And I think that's another reason why we went at 8 hours. It wasn't because it was an unknown sort of activity, it was just putting it in the budget, everything was tight.
Mhm.
We've been really pushing on departments to keep the budgets down. So that's what I remember from the mindset last year when we looked at this.
All right, any other questions? Anything you want to add?
I don't think so. I just, you know, everybody else has staff, please, please. You know, it helps the town, you know, as Mary said, you know, have a more professional presence. Yeah.
I will say, this town has an impressive penchant for conservation land and restrictions, which I think is amazing, and it's one of the things that drew me to this town. I do believe you need to have somebody who understands and is qualified to back up that need and that desire for the community to preserve land. That's a big component of this as well, is, you know, what the townspeople want to see going forward, and, you know, this is a part of that as well.
All right, all set?
All right. Thank you, guys.
I had a big plan for you all, but it's 9 o'clock. I can give you the veterans' budget because I did meet, and I'm not sure what happened there. I do apologize. But basically, his budget includes a 2.5% increase and the request for a print cartridge.
For what?
A print cartridge.
Oh dear.
Yes, which,
Is it a special print cartridge?
no, it's just a print cartridge
It's
needed
red,
to
white, and
ensure he
blue.
can print things in the office.
It's veterans, it's red, white, and blue.
I don't think so.
So do you want me to add a little bit more to that?
Oh, sure.
Because we shared the veterans with another
Give me a
town,
laugh, come on.
with Bolton. One year usually they bought the print cartridge and the other year we bought the print.
How much is this
Ah.
cartridge?
Thank you, June. It's $85, but he took $35 out of another line item, so it's only a net $50 increase.
What number is he?
Going
I'm
up.
trying to,
543, here it is.
sorry.
Oh, no problem. So it's a 2.5% increase on the salary, which is a total of $228, bringing the total salary for the veterans agent for '24 to $9,354. And then office supplies last year was $265. This year, the request that's being put in is, I apologize, the 35 was not circled out, it was actually added in. There's a dues for the Veterans Association that he belongs to. They actually, interestingly enough, they hold an annual training, but what's nice is that this is a regional veterans agent that we have. So I guess we're not funding him going to the conference every year.
No, sometimes we do cover some of it. And I have to say that I made a mistake on this.
Oh,
So if you actually look at the third page, because it was looking weird to me, this year's budget should actually be 300, not the 265.
okay.
So he's actually only asking for an extra $50.
So, it is, okay, I thought I had $50 written down
Yeah,
somewhere, and then I'm
and
going,
that's
this
why.
isn't adding up right.
Oh, okay.
But just
So-
also keep in mind is that when COVID hit, he went from having 635, which helped to pay for the meetings that he went to before COVID. So all of that was cut out of his budget, and he was cut down to 260 and 265 in 22.
There we go. Okay, so, yes, so, okay, I was gonna say, I thought I had
Sorry.
$50. No, that's
That
okay.
was totally me.
So it's up here, right down at the bottom of your screen here. This is the FY23 budget in the first column. The second column is the FY24 request from the department. Yes, the increase from 300 to 350 is a 16.7% increase, but it's $50 for a print cartridge, so I have to put that in a little bit of context. So I have recommended the requested increase on personnel salary and expenses, and he has level funded benefits having the same number of residents and anticipating that may not change. It's hard. It's, as you know, it's Chapter 115 benefits. We get reimbursed the 75%, but it comes later. That's a moving target in terms of that number. So some years you're lower, some years you're higher, need a reserve fund transfer. It all depends on if you have an influx of veterans, in town. So it's a relatively straightforward one. I mean, I'll buy him a print cartridge if everybody really is opposed.
This, where is this, the budget spreadsheet? Because I was trying to find the FY24 one.
This
and-
is mine so far.
Okay, no, not shared yet?
Not shared yet. That was part of what I was going to do tonight. I
Okay.
was going to give you my first preview. So I don't know how much longer you want to go, Scott. It's up to you.
I'm fine going forward. Anybody else have it?
I just think prices are going up. The cartridge is probably going to be $75 the next time he goes to buy it. I mean, it's crazy. I know mine at work almost doubled. I just had to put in for it, and yeah, I know. I mean, I'm fine with buying him an ink cartridge.
We'll assume he went out and priced it.
I think you got 3 quotes.
Yeah.
Don't laugh. He actually had Amy look twice to different places.
No,
just
he
to
did?
make
Oh,
sure
my
that it
goodness.
wasn't too
Oh,
much.
he's such a nice
Yeah,
guy.
He really
Oh,
is.
He was trying.
Oh, does a lot for our town.
All right, so veterans
So
done.
that's veterans.
Oh, excuse me.
So if you'd like, and we can go as far into this as you want tonight and pick it up at the next meeting, since you all are meeting once a week, I wanted to go over with you what I shared with the select board at their meeting last Monday. So I spoke with them about some of the smaller budgets that are relatively straightforward. They did take votes on some of them, and I didn't know if some of those smaller budgets, especially the ones where you're not receiving a presentation, like the moderator, because it's $50 and $85, if you might want to take a vote on those as well and start kind of picking off some of those little ones. So I will, I had this all lined up nicely, and then it moved.
I think in the past, didn't we just take one night and go line by line?
We incrementally did it.
We did?
But yes, we started with the easy stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, we did,
As the
just what you
selectmen.
suggested. We just followed suit with whatever the selectmen did.
So this was my first pass at the easier ones.
Okay.
If that works for you. So the first, and you'll have to ignore my color coding because I'm now working on version 2, which is, after I added in their votes. So I have some color coding signals for myself. But the moderator salary level funded from 23 to 24 at $50 and $85. And what I did with the board was I kind of took these in segments. And if that works for you guys, and then if you want to ask questions after I do a few of them, and then you could take a vote by line items if you'd like. Select Board, what we did was the increase for 2.5% on the stipend, as I discussed with you last week, and the 2.5% on the wages for the assistant to the town administrator. We did go up the 2.5% on the consulting. And as we discussed, the postage increase and accounting for the mailing of the warrant is why you see that large increase in the expense line item, because that was not previously accounted for. There was a supplemental request. It was not voted on by the select board, so it is not included, as you'll see over in, I wish I need like a pointer, a laser pointer. Not included over in the TA column or the select board column here. Town administrator budget is actually a decrease of $6,000. And what I was requesting was, and I think I added this up wrong, which was...
You can use your mouse as a
Oh
pointer,
yeah,
too.
that's true. You can see it on the mouse. Sorry, thank you. Good point. It's late. So I did the math up wrong here. This was actually supposed to be plus the $550 because I am paying currently myself for an Adobe subscription. So I'm gonna have to have the board revote on this one. I actually asked them for it, but I realized the math added up incorrectly. So right now I'm paying $25 a month myself just for an Adobe subscription because it wasn't in the FY23 budget. I really find having to, I mean, it's Adobe. If I have to print, scan, copy, it saves a lot of time to be able to combine, consolidate documents, get them up on on Google Drive so we can share them with everybody. I priced it out with Travis from CM Geeks. I can get a license, which is a one-time fee of $550 rather than paying for it monthly. And Adobe doesn't change that much over time. So I did request, you know, especially since the budget is going down, I did ask for the $550 one-time supplemental for Adobe. You all asked for $5. I'm sad to say no. I did recommend your $5 increase for FinCom from $175 to $180. And I did put in the $110,000 reserve fund request going from 95 and 23 to 110 and 24. That was approved by the select board. So all of these lines, which is 1 through 10 that I just discussed with you, were all approved on the 9th by the select board.
Minus the number 8 because they'll have to go look.
Yeah,
at it.
they did approve it with the Adobe,
What-
but the number wasn't correct, so I need to go back and have them revote it for clarity's sake. So does anyone have any questions on lines 1 through 10?
Nope, I make a motion that we accept lines 1 through 10 as presented. However you want to put that in there, Julie.
Do we have a second?
Second.
No, it's gonna do that funky thing to
All
me.
right, any further discussion? All right, roll call. Scott, aye.
Mary, aye.
Janet, I.
Julie, I.
All right.
And then, let me see.
You drag that right down and click it, it'll. put 'em all
You know what
in.
it does? It adds the days. Look at this. It goes up.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really annoying.
Oh.
So I'll fix it
Copy and
after.
paste real quick.
Copy and paste,
Yes.
yeah. But actually, an easier way of doing this might be, because I can put I wasn't thinking about this, I can put the dates in after. Hold on, let me pull up this version. This is what I was doing before. I was bouncing between versions here. So this is actually the PDF of the budget that I presented to the select board. And let's see. Here we go. Okay, so this is a little bit easier, I think, to see. Get rid of that. It's a little cleaner than the spreadsheet I'm currently working on, so. All right, so we just did 1 through 10. And let's go down to the next grouping. So we'll do, let's see, 15 through, 15 and then 21 through 26. 15 is the audit. We are hopefully going to go out to, well, we are going to go out to bid rather for the audit and hopefully get a better price. I will say, I think granted services are going up, but $26,000 is a bit high for a budget of this size in my experience. So without knowing exactly what that audit's gonna be, I just recommended level funding it for right now at the $26,000 until we see what the RFP prices bring back. The reval for the assessors, that came in at $17,300. That is an increase of $2,600 over FY '23. That is a, contractual obligation. Treasurer collector, so there is an increase for the new treasurer collector's salary that will, over the course of the year, or they'll get the 2.5% increase. So that goes to $92,250. That is an increase of $13,262, but that also includes 3 additional hours per week for the treasurer collector. Dennis was working 37, the new treasurer collector will be working 40. Part-time wages are going up just by the 2.5% increase. The incentive stays the same. The incentive, I don't know if you're familiar with that, it's when they obtain certification as a treasurer collector, or as a tax collector or a treasurer from the school, they get a $1,000 a year certification. That was voted at the last town meeting or 2 town meetings ago?
It's always been in for.
Oh, it's always been in, okay.
Always been in for the collector, it's been there.
Okay. I thought it was more recent. I don't know why I thought that. Never mind.
No, but the treasurer, when he combined it, he actually then went to school and got both.
Ah, I see. Okay. So it's $1,000 whether you're certified tax collector or treasurer. If you have both, you don't get anything extra. It's a flat annual stipend of $1,000. Dennis currently receives it. The new treasurer collector has completed the tax collector side of the school. He's taking the exam in February. He's currently completing the treasurer collector side of the school and will be taking that exam, I believe he said this summer or fall. So he will qualify for that incentive in '24. And then expenses, those I actually increased myself by $6,500, even above and beyond what the treasurer was requesting. And really his expenses pertained, as he discussed, to postage, contractual obligations, but we talked about the Kelly Ryan that wasn't fully budgeted for the deputy collector and wanting to go up to reflect what it really has been for the first 6 months of FY '23, which is $4,500. So because that wasn't budgeted for '23 and what Dennis had put in was quite low, because we just didn't know, I believe it was budgeted at $2,500, and if you want I can pull up the spreadsheet, but we needed to, or $3,500 rather, we needed to up it to accurately reflect what those costs are coming in at. And then legal, we've talked extensively about, thorn in everyone's side, but we're $75,000 is what the recommendation is, and then personnel level funded at $250. So does anyone have questions on 15 and then 20 through 26?
Going back to the 24, I just want to clarify the deputy collector. So it was something that wasn't included in the budget previously, or was it
Right, it was
oversight?
a DOR recommendation when
Or-
the state came in that Margaret wanted to implement right away.
Yeah, that was, originally what we were doing was the deputy collector would collect the funds and he would automatically deduct his fees from it and then cut us a check. And the better, more transparent way would be for us to have the deputy collect the funds, turn over all the funds to the town, and then bill us their fees, so that way they were actually seeing what the actual cost is to the town to collect those fees. But
Right.
it wasn't in the budget, and they did it mid-year, and it wasn't budgeted. So this year, we may be a little bit, I don't know how much.
But in theory, it should be a
But-
wash.
But we will be able to increase our local receipts a little bit
Correct.
by the amount that would
Right.
be coming in now to the town.
It's just like
So it's
now
kind of a
showing
wash. Yes.
showing better on the budget.
Yes.
And it's
correct.
showing now in the operating budget, but
Yeah, but
the
we're
act-
also bringing in the revenue side,
Yes.
so you're
Right.
right, it is a wash.
It's really properly accounting for it when you're doing your you know,
Yeah, so you can really see what it's costing.
revenues and expenditures, yeah.
Anybody else?
No.
You want to vote on this group? Janet, you're the nominee.
I make a motion that we accept 15, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26 as shown on the budget spreadsheet.
I'll second that.
All right, any more discussion? All right, roll call. Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Janet, I.
Julie, I.
All right, passes 4-0.
Excellent, thank you.
So I say, is Julie done typing?
What did I do?
I was waiting to see if you were done typing, that's all.
I'm actually trying to cut and paste.
Okay. Yeah, I'll slow down. I
Did
can
you do it
slow
all
down.
right? You
I
got
think
it?
so. I'll send it out and you guys can tell me if I got it.
So, tax title, as Dennis mentioned, he was foreseeing an increase of about 50%, unfortunately due to increased collections. Data systems is an increase of $2,896. That is a result of an increase, a small increase in the annual fee for the website, as well as Gmail has gone up, as we mentioned before. Conservation Commission, just so you know, the select board did not approve line item 37. They wanted further discussion about how that is going to be funded, similar to the questions that you were asking this evening. And that I am bringing back, Carolyn is gonna come before the select board Monday evening to discuss that with them. They did, however, vote line 38, the expenses. It is level funded from FY '23. And then Planning Board, level funded at $1,000 from FY '23. Zoning Board of Appeals, level funded at $500 from '23. And the folks at the Agricultural Commission would like $25 extra for a total of $1,375. So that is 27, 28, and then 37 through 41.
But, for the wages, conservation, are they questioning the hours?
The supplemental funding request for the 4
Just-
hours. They wanted, so it's similar to what June was talking about there, and I didn't know this because this was prior to me. There was a discussion that apparently had been had about where that funding would come from for additional hours beyond the 8 hours. You know, it needs to be, you just had the discussion there. It's something the select board want to discuss further. It was an arrangement I wasn't entirely aware of. I mean, I think some of the things that she's asking for are outside of the scope of what wetlands can pay for, like grants and minutes. Well, because minutes are not all specifically related to wetlands.
Well, when they first, I'm remembering now when they first brought Maddie in, she couldn't do minutes because they were using the funding.
Oh, yeah, see. So that's part of the issue.
Yeah, the wetlands funding. So that was something she wasn't able to do because, but, I
mean,
didn't,
the
but
supplemental-
they didn't use that money for this year for funding any part of her.
So, correct, so they're fully funded through the general fund budget right now for the 8 hours that Maddie receives.
And the only question is this 4 hours.
The 4 hours,
Okay.
right, which is a total of the $6,220. That's what would be added if the 6 hours were included.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the 4 hours. were
4 hours, okay,
included.
okay.
I agree with the fact that they probably need the extra hours. I just I heard the selectmen, I was listening in on. I think about how the police fund some of their salaries through mitigation money, and I wonder if there's any ways that, we already know our budget, the school is giving us a big hit. And, I'm not doubting that they don't need the hours. That is probably very clear, but I have to think about this funding.
I mean, I think the challenge in using outside funding sources is it's not a consistent budgeted level of funding. So offsetting some of the cost, I don't see an issue with. Putting all of that cost through wetlands, obviously you can't do because that's not the only thing that she's focused on. I don't honestly think 12 hours a week is unreasonable for a conservation agent, like you said, at the number of hours that's there. I also would like to work with conservation to sort of bring that position more into the town offices and kind of work with, Maddie a bit more.
And I think the thing we're seeing, I mean, it's not, conservation has a very complicated job. And
really
it's
do.
not, this isn't going to get any easier. This work that they're struggling with now, even having Maddie on, is not going to get easier as we go into the future. So they have, with the town, we have to stay on top of it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ARPA funding is temporary, mitigation funding is temporary. The concern is eventually you're either gonna have to transfer those funds over to the general fund budget or you're gonna have to lay people off. So, with wetlands, you do have an ongoing funding source, but it varies depending on what you're bringing in for fees. So it could be, flush one year and not so much the next year, depending on what's going on for activity. So I don't think it's an unreasonable request. It's, just obviously entirely up to FinCom and the select board how they want to go with it.
No, I don't think the request is unreasonable, and I agree with Julie. Everything is just getting more and more complicated, and
Yeah.
I have a note from last year, we talked about open space funding as well as wetland funding.
Oh, it's on the CPA side?
No, that's from,
For the agent, for the conservation agent.
not
Last year we
not
talked
from the
about
not from the CPA,
No,
it's
from the open space account.
Open space fund, which is
Trust,
something different.
yeah.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm not.
no, I think she thought we were talking about, remember we talked
We're not
about.
talking about CPA, we're talking about
I think I heard too
open
much
space
CPA
fund.
tonight. I apologize. I'm getting confused.
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
is that the same as the mall fund, Scott? Open space fund, or is that something else?
Yes, no,
Yeah.
it's the same fund.
Okay.
it's mitigation money.
Yeah,
Still,
exactly.
it's mitigation money. That's where my brain was going as well, but.
Well, that's what my note says.
Yeah, and then
But to
Kristen's point saying
That's
that
not
the
gonna
money's
be there
gonna,
for-
it's not gonna be there forever.
Well, if it's in a trust, though, that's different. So are you using a
It's
trust
an
where you're
open
just
space
using the
trust.
interest?
No.
Oh, it's not
Theirs
that
is
kind of
full,
trust.
and-
Okay.
But this year, they've used most of that to purchase the land.
But they're gonna
So-
get that money back, correct?
When they get that money back, yes, but as of right now, they don't have the funds in the account. And I think they've only, I can't remember now, I just looked at it too. I think there's only either 3 or 5 more years left on the 50,000 that they get for open space. So that is not gonna be replenished, not going, any way right now at this time. Once that money's gone, it's gone.
When you say that won't be replenished though, does it sound like we have to, the grant's just barely covering the CPA money, right?
CPA
There's
gets
not
the
gonna be
money
much
first.
left.
Yes, and then
Oh,
whatever's left
after
over,
that.
I think it was talked was for the money to go back to the general fund first. And then if there was anything after that, then it
And
would
that's
go
what I
back to
told
open space.
Tim and I thought that would need to be certified as FY23 free cash, so the earliest you're talking is the fall of '23 before you could have it. So I just, I try to avoid when possible funding salaries out of short-term funding.
No, I agree.
But I understand there's a need for it sometimes, we all do it. And, it's just, if you can move things into the budget, if there's room, but obviously, to your point, there is a lot coming from the schools, there are other supplemental funding requests from different departments, so there are certainly competing interests here.
And I think there was some discussion last year with the thought that starting with the 8 hours, we'd see how it went. And if, like I had said, if it went over that, then they could either use wetlands or open space funds, just so that way there they could actually get a feel for the amount of hours that were gonna be needed. So, like you had said when you were gonna work with her as far as what the plans were for her to do for the extra 4 hours, because as of right now, they're not putting in any money coming out of wetlands or open space, so. But we've also, this past year, had a lot to do with the grant stuff, which took up, I would say, a lot of her time, but I don't know how much in general.
I will tell you, I've not written an MVP grant. They're technical and relatively complicated. I mean, hats off to her for getting
Oh, yeah.
that grant. That's huge.
Oh, yeah. She's been a real asset. I mean, I can't,
She's here,
yeah,
too,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. So we can, if you want to hold on that, think about it some more. That's what the select board are doing. The rest of the line items, except for 37, they did approve.
We typically follow suit with them, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well. I
Okay,
think we
so
wanna
I'll make a
hold off on
motion to accept 27, 28, 38, 39, 40, and 41 as presented on the budget.
it. Do we have a second?
I'll second it as long as I got the right line numbers here. 27, 28,
38, 39, 40, and 41?
38,
Yeah.
39.
And 40 and 41.
Okay, I'll second that.
All right, any more discussion? All right, roll call. Scott, aye.
Mary, aye.
Janet, I.
Julie, aye.
All right, passes 4-0.
Guys are efficient. I like it.
We
oh,
have practice.
Oh, we should have done 45.
I thought I was all the way to the bottom of the sheet, but I wasn't. So there's 45. This is the town report, which we are looking into. And I did get some additional information on this, if I can get into my email. Mary did some digging into how many reports were left and.
Remember, everybody can see this.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I probably should pull that up. Because I don't know what else is in there. That's a valid point. I don't have the hard numbers, but we did do some research and we are talking to Assabet to see if we can do it cheaper that way. Also, Clinton Offset
printer. Yeah.
may be able to do it as well. We anticipated, like everything else, there's probably a small additional cost for paper and ink because everything is going up. So we're hoping to order less books. We're trying to get an exact number of, what we have left and what we should order. We also talked about the possibility, I don't know if this was here at the select board, of maybe doing it completely electronically and charging a nominal fee for people that want a hard copy. I don't know, like if you get a bylaw book or something like that. So there's a lot of options we're looking into. I would hope that if anything, we would use less than 35.85. I don't anticipate going over that. So there's 45. I want to make my pages nice and even and take a vote on 45.
I will. I will
Thank you.
make a motion to accept line item 45,
Second.
town report expenses.
All right, any more discussion? All right, roll call. Scott, aye.
Mary, aye.
Janet, I.
Julie, aye.
All right,
Thank you very much.
passes 4-0.
Okay, this is a good little group right in here. So this is lines 57 through 62. Plumbing and gas inspector expenses, $300 level funded. The actual fees come out of the revolving account, the payment to the inspector based on the fees that they receive for the inspections. Same with the electrical inspector. And they are requesting level funding at $600. Animal inspector salary has a whopping $52 increase for the 2.5%. And level funded expenses. Animal control officer salary, same, the 2.5% increase. And expenses, the select board held on this line item because there was sort of a discrepancy between animal inspector put in for level, but animal control had an increase, and they wanted to know which was more accurately reflective of costs in that field. I did speak with Chief Shartner, who had worked with the animal control officer on the budget, and he said that he was more than comfortable also level funding the animal control officer expenses to match the animal inspector. It is $46, but that one was held. So what I did recommend, actually, I had recommended to increase it by $46, but it will go back to the select board as a level funded recommendation at 18.
So can we just vote it as level funded tonight?
You can.
I'm gonna do that then. All right, oh, I don't wanna jump in here, can I? Yeah, because we
Yes.
discuss after. I make a motion to accept 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, and 62 to be level funded at 1820 as shown on the budget report spreadsheet.
And just to be consistent, seconded.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, roll call, Scott, aye.
Here, I.
Janet, I.
Julie, aye. And I'm sorry, that number was 40.
Passes 4-0.
40, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, and 62, and it's level funded at 1820.
Right, it's this,
Okay.
this
Line
number here.
62.
Why doesn't
It's
it
60,
highlight
line item 62, level funded 1820.
that? Yeah, it's
So-
18.
At 1820. Okay, that's right.
1820, yep.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have, don't do that to me. Okay, so let's do, oh, let me show 2 pages, that would be nice. Yeah, no? That's because I put it in a PDF. All right, well, we'll go over 2 pages, it's okay, I won't be neurotic. Line item 72, streetlights, recommended 2.5% increase. Utilities, like everything else, are going up. So that's a $225 increase on streetlights. The cemetery asked for a 2.5% increase on their contractual expenses for an overall budgetary increase of $391. That's line item 75. Line item 76, Board of Health salary has the 2.5% increase in it, as does the Board of Health wages, and expenses are level funded at $1,000. Neshoba Valley Health is a 5% increase. That's a fixed fee for the regional health collaborative that the town is part of. So that's an increase of $493 over FY23. And Neshoba Nursing is also a 5% increase, or $226 over FY23. Might as well include veterans, since we just discussed it. That's the 2.5% increase for $228 on the salary and the $50 on the expenses for the print cartridge, with the level funded benefits at $11,000. And community social services, I'll stop at that one, $7,000 level funded. That is the wheat funding that goes.
So
for
just
their
go
food funding.
back the one page so I can get the numbers.
Absolutely.
I would try to do them and then you, 72, 75, 76, 77, okay.
And then
78, 79, 80, 85, 86, and 87. Okay. I move to accept line items 72, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 85, 86, and 87 as presented
Oh, I'm
on
sorry, I
the...
went down too far.
Oh, did we do 87 and 80 and 88?
Yeah, we went through it.
88, in 88.
Yep, sorry, I
Um,
jumped.
as presented on the budget.
So 79 and 80?
79, 80, 85, 86, 87, and 88.
Okay.
I think I got them all.
Mhm.
72
Nicely
from the other
done.
page, right?
Yeah.
72, 75,
Starting to feel like we're
76.
playing bingo over here.
Yeah, it's
75, 88? Don't throw letters in there.
Bingo.
You really confuse me.
Motion's out there, okay, seconded.
All right, discussion. Actually, I do have a question.
Sure.
Line 88, the
Yes.
community social services. That is something we increased, I think it was last fiscal year, from 4,000 to 7,000. And I noticed, I think after we increased it in FY22, they still continued, they expended 4,000 still. Looks like nothing's even been expended yet for FY23. I'm just curious to, are they still, because they were looking to add more things in the social service realm here, and it looks like that at least the first year, nothing was done. And is there any plans of that nature?
Yeah, I think she's really trying, but again, it's still a little bit of the COVID
Yeah, if you
Is-
scroll it down a little bit.
is, I just, this is Victoria, right? Is she's the one that's doing some of this?
No, I think this
was
this
for
is
the
separate.
select board,
This is
right?
under the select board. This is
Oh.
the WHEAT funding that's an assessment that comes from the,
Oh, I'm confused
We-
then.
We,
They're a collaborative-
assessment is the 4,000.
yep,
And the additional was put in there in case we needed to do other social service
okay.
things, whether it be with food pantry or something like that, I think is what they had originally added it in for. And
Right.
as of right now, there hasn't been anything that.
I mean, is it something that was even brought up to the select board to remind them that, I mean, they're the ones that pushed for that extra 3,000,
They
and
actually didn't
it's,
talk about it, but I don't, didn't they talk about it? I thought they talked about it, but I don't remember what it was about.
I don't know, I just say, I would just think, since we're still not settled, you know what I'm trying to say, that it's there, leave it, and then if maybe next year because we're still seeing some needs in the community. I know that the food pantry has been huge and
The
just,
food pantry is definitely a need. Do they need to go to the select board and say, could you give us some money?
yeah.
Then I'll make that
Yeah,
happen.
and we have to be
Yeah,
careful about.
I know the food pantry is really in need.
Yeah, I'll
We
make that
can't-
happen. I
As a
didn't
town,
realize.
we can't just donate money.
No,
I
got
know.
it.
So, I mean, we would have
Yeah.
to have an actual
Yeah, yeah.
event or
Yeah.
a supply or a service that we're actually providing, but.
So you need some specifics about what.
And they
Like a
didn't have
bill?
their fundraiser this, they usually have a fundraiser in the
March,
fall, or
chili
is it,
cook-off.
no, they used to have
Oh, yeah, the wine.
the
thing.
wine thing, they didn't have that this year, and so they may
Yeah.
even need more source of funding, so I vote till we leave that there. I don't vote, my opinion is we should leave it there.
yeah, I didn't have a concern about being left there as much as, it seems like of
What's
the
the
times we've
additional-
just talked about, why we put it there, and
It's not
the
getting
times
used.
we're in and all this type of stuff, why is it not being used? I mean, that's really the question is, was it forgotten? Or there is some blocking that we don't understand?
I think it's probably education and people don't even realize it's there. But now we've announced it.
Oh, I
On-
think that
on,
Mary is
yeah.
about to make something happen.
Yeah, I
at the
hear,
end of the
I
table.
can,
Thinking,
yeah.
I can
I
see the wheels
smoke, the
turning
smoke
over
is
there.
coming out.
Some steam going on.
There's
Okay.
money on the table in the fiscal 23 budget, is that what I'm hearing?
All right.
Believe you
All right.
are.
Okay.
Okay, any more discussion?
Understood.
Okay, roll call. Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Janet, I.
Julie, I.
All right, passes 4-0.
I promise we're almost done. There's only 113 line items, I believe, so we're close. Line item 89, the select board held. The reason being, with Bob retiring, they wanted to have the library trustees do a little investigation into current salaries for library directors and make sure that there is sufficient funding there, which I've already spoken with Lynette. We're going to be meeting early next week to start those conversations. And she's going to have the board do some.
Is there a concern that that's too low for a?
We don't know. I think that's what
Or
it
you
is.
just
It's
don't
more
know,
just
okay.
a knowledge seeking
Okay.
mission, information seeking, to make sure before we just
Okay.
throw a number back out at there that could be off.
I
Okay.
think he was one of the people that were.
Yeah, he was on the.
Market rate
yeah,
adjustment
market
was
rating.
done. But again, that now is, 3 years old,
Okay.
right?
Mm.
When we did
It
the
is,
last.
it is, and I will tell you,
So
this is an
crazy.
employee's market right now. It
Yeah.
really is. I mean,
Mhm.
when fast food restaurants and, fine dining restaurants can't find anyone to work. I mean, this is really the market right now where you name your price kind of thing. So it's a challenge. But I think that was, if I understood the select board correctly, it was making sure there is sufficient funding and just taking a look at it before we just move forward and, level fund it with the increase.
So they didn't,
Can we give
they didn't do
free
anything?
french fries with these jobs?
It sounds like a great
I
idea.
don't know, but we gotta. think
I'll be
of
first in
something to
line.
give away.
So they passed on this one?
So they passed on 89.
Okay.
They did approve line 90. which is a $910 increase in expenses. That's basically books to meet their formula grant amount that they need to hit every year.
Yep.
Cultural Council, MJ was here, $1,500 level funded is the request. Historical Commission would like an extra $15 to $615. Memorial Day level funded at $2,000. They held on this. There were some questions about who does Memorial Day and what's going on with that, and I need to do some research, which I am in the process of doing. And, or no, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. Memorial Day.
They proved Memorial Day and passed on festive
They
event.
held on festive events, yes, sorry, I'm getting my events backwards.
I mean, Memorial Day, isn't that part of like the flags and the...
It's the flags
and
and
cemetery,
the,
stuff
right,
like
it's
that.
not like the parade or anything
Yeah.
like that, it's the actual graves and the
It actually
flags.
used to cover the parade,
Oh, okay.
but the Legion Hall is really nice about it, is that if there's any expenses, which isn't necessarily fair, but if there's any expenses over and above their budget, they pay for it.
Okay, that's very kind of
And they
them.
have, but we haven't had a parade now for 2 years.
COVID.
Yeah, because of COVID, and they weren't sure what they were gonna, if they were gonna bring it back or not at this point. So,
Right.
Probably 3 years then, right? 20, 21, 22.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
So festive events, I'm switching back to my other budget because I did do some digging and it hasn't been used in a number of years because it used to be used for, and I will give you the exact, cost to copy and mail flyers promoting Christmas in Berlin and Home Day.
Oh,
But now we use technology like Facebook, the signboard, etc., and the boards and committees for those two are defunct. So the select board held on that. You can choose to level fund, zero it out, hold,
could
whatever
pay
you
for
would
our
like to
candy
do.
for the Easter event.
Good.
So that's festive events. And then debt and interest. This is literally according to our debt schedule from Dennis. It's going to be $101,175 in interest and $190,000 in principal. And so those are lines, well, 89 I think is a hold, so that's 90, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, and 97.
And was it the select board also on 95?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, they held on 95. That one's up to you folks, what you'd like to do with 95.
To be consistent, should
Yeah,
we just hold,
just
because we'll
wait
get
right now.
confused
I was gonna make
later
the
on.
motion.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to accept the line items 89, 90, no, sorry, 90, 92, 93, 94, 96, and 97 as presented in the budget. I change that motion every time, but you can make it the same. Just so all
Copy
you
and
out there know.
We have a second.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Janet, I.
Julia,
Right, passes 4-0.
Okay. And then this is the last page. Good news on Assabet Regional Housing Consortium. Stephanie actually ran the numbers over there of what we're using. And basically, with a potential increase in costs, we can safely put in for $7,000, and that's a $5,000 savings. So that's huge right there in my mind. And because that's our piece of good news before the piece of bad news, Worcester Regional Retirement, which is an assessment that we have no control over, has gone up $58,729. Dennis will tell you, as he did when he was here, that they made bad investments over some years, and all of the people in the all of the towns in the retirement system are having to face steeper assessments.
Krista, do you have handy what that is on a percentage?
I believe it's 9-ish.
9-ish, yeah.
9 and change.
It's too late for me to calculate that in my head.
Workers' comp, great news. This is sort of like the yo-yo time here. Great news. They agreed if we locked into level fund for FY24 and to go up by no more than 2.5% in FY25. So we could level fund workers' comp at $25,300. Unemployment insurance, unfortunately, there are some new claims, and it is anticipated that we will need another $10,000. So that goes up from $25,000 to $35,000, as Dennis presented when he was here. Police, fire, sick, and accident is the injured on duty. That I don't have final numbers on that yet, but they have told me a 5% escalator will be sufficient, and hopefully it will be less. So that's the $1,200 that I've asked for. Sick pay, June has calculated in for $40,775, which is an increase of $995. Medicare going up to $48,000, an increase of $2,100. And property liability, it is level funded in terms of the premium, but I did, as I mentioned before, keep a 2.5% increase in there, because every time we bring new vehicles on, that increases the cost of insurance. And then the proposed step increases that you voted to previously approve are in these line items as well.
Okay. And again, the unemployment insurance comes back to the fact that we're essentially laid off employees, but it's the mandatory retirement age in the public safety space, as I understood it, that allows them to collect unemployment.
I mean, it's not layoffs, but there are a number of other reasons that can be,
Okay.
without
Yeah.
going into
Yeah.
specifics.
Yeah, if an employee is let go or anything like that, they can still collect too.
Correct.
Okay. And we may have that scenario.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Unfortunately, those we just don't have a choice on.
right.
Right.
And
Okay.
you do always, if there are concerns or the ability to contest, the town always does.
And I was gonna say, yeah, Dennis has always tried to, but it's
Not always successful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I make a motion to accept line items 99, 106, 107, 108, 110, 111, 112, 113, and 900. What is that?
I would just say the proposed FY.
The proposed
step increase
FY
total.
24 step increases.
Yeah, which is
It's-
that total of $8,447, as we discussed at the last meeting.
It doesn't get a line item because it's not a line item.
No, what's gonna happen now is for the next budget that you see, I haven't approved any budgets that had a recommended step increase. Those are now gonna get worked into those
Gotcha.
budgets and come back before you for a
Gotcha,
review
gotcha,
and vote.
gotcha, gotcha. Okay. Did you get that, Julie?
Yeah.
Do you want me to repeat it?
I'm good.
Got it? Ready for the second?
Yeah.
I second that motion.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. Roll call. Scott, aye.
Mary, aye.
Janet, I.
Julia,
Guys are troopers, that's all I have.
Nice job.
Very
Look at
nicely
you.
done.
Yeah.
Wow.
Practice.
Stan will be happy.
I have to
Yeah,
say this
you
is,
would've, man.
I have to say this is easier in person than
So
on
much.
Zoom.
Does the big screen help too?
Yes.
The
love
screen is
to-
very nice.
Harder, because I have to have two computers going
Yeah,
to take the
yeah.
notes and,
Yeah.
So why is it that not all the boards are meeting live? That,
We don't have to?
You don't have to under the Baker's order.
It's still the new Baker order?
You still have it, and hybrid is still allowed. Or I'm sorry, virtual.
Virtual.
Or hybrid is still allowed.
and when is that through?
I don't know.
April, I think. It might have gotten extended out a little bit further. I'll have to check. I would imagine, though, that online and virtual options are here to stay. From what I'm hearing, they're trying to work in some legislation to allow that to be permanent, because the upside of it is that it's increased public participation. You know, folks can sit at home, they don't need a babysitter, they can be in their PJs, and, you know, they can watch live. So I don't know where that's gonna go, but, you know, and the other thing is winter, our COVID numbers have gone up. And so I think there's some concern, you know, amongst the boards and committees.
so, did we adjourn?
Well, not quite.
No,
yet.
I
Just,
haven't done that.
Confirm for next week's schedule. I mean, we have, well, highway coming in.
Judy's.
I wasn't gonna do it.
That will be the main one.
Didn't know
Is
if
the
I
Board of
missed it.
Health coming in? I mean, we,
I will send out a reminder to everyone.
because
to make sure we get, and I did this time too, but
And you had, also we had listed as inspectional services.
So
We
that's-
usually don't, Rich would be to cover that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we'd have recreation.
yes, and
Right.
recreation.
Okay, coming
It
next.
looks like that will be the vice chair, and I will confirm that as well and let you know.
Okay, and then the spread, your working spreadsheet, I mean, the area I want to know and start seeing is the revenue numbers, right?
So I'm happy to.
Where we're going with that. Is that something you're prepared to talk about today, or wait till next week?
What I did with the select board, so the first 2 pages here are really, really rough estimates, and I'm not prepared to tell you that they are final because they are based on a number of variables, including, state aid, we haven't gotten any numbers for. I was able to basically look at local receipts, local receipt and what we did on the recap for 23, and I kind of moved those numbers over to 24. So I would caution you, and I will put this up in the folder, you're welcome to take a look at it. I did not go through it with the select board because there are so many variables in it at this point. We're just missing a lot of information, and a lot of it's assumed at this time, or it's level funded from the previous fiscal year until we get that additional information. I am attending the MMA conference. They typically give out the state aid numbers that they like to do that. That's fun for them, I guess. So I will get those numbers on Friday, and we'll have a better one for you, but I will put this up in the file for you guys to take a look at. The one big increase, so basically state aid, I took FY23 actual numbers and put them into FY24. So that's why you see a 2.73 increase. It's not that I have FY24 numbers, I'm basing it on FY23 actuals as opposed to budgeted, which I do have. Local receipts are based on what we talked about for the FY23 recap. Those have not been adjusted yet for FY24, but we did a significant increase in accounting for local receipts to avoid having to increase, raise, and appropriate, or in other words, taxation on residents, because as we talked about with those commercial offsets that needed to be made on the residential side, we were really concerned about the impact that would have on residents. And I think that we were very conservatively estimating local receipts, which is a great thing. But when you're starting to get to that tipping point where you're saying we're leaving some money on the table, we shouldn't be raising and appropriating additional funding in the form of taxation and tapping into our levy limit, or excess levy capacity rather, when we have some excess local receipts. And one of the biggest ones is hotel tax. We budgeted for $95,000 in FY23, and we're looking at, basically $250,000 is what we're coming in as for our actual numbers.
Now, is that because they're getting way more usage than
They're
had been anticipated?
I think he said they're at 70% capacity now. We
Mhm.
just never anticipated, we never planned for a hotel. So that wasn't part of the original, project down there, is my understanding. So that's tax that we.
Yeah, and unfortunately for COVID, we had just opened the hotel, so we had only like 1 or 2 months come in, and then COVID hit.
Yep.
So we had no idea what was gonna happen during COVID, or even after COVID, so we were still, I think, very low. We were being very conservative on it, but
It makes sense to do 100%.
Yeah.
So that's a huge jump from, it's a 25% increase in accounting for local receipts. I will tell you that we're looking at about 1.5 million that came in local receipts for 22. So I think we can certainly comfortably make that jump to 1.2, and we're still leaving capacity there on the table
And that
without
was in-
having to raise and appropriate.
In 22.
Yep.
Okay.
because we still have to work on our building too, because it looks like building has kind of come to a.
I was gonna say, so the reason I didn't raise any of the numbers in this column over what we're looking at is because building was large, And I may be able to adjust some of the other local receipt numbers up slightly, but building is gonna come down because it was sort of artificially inflated by Highland Ridge last year.
Which is building permits, or what's?
So they broke it, yeah, it used
Use
to
your
be-
mouse, because I can't.
I'm sorry, it used to be all combined in other licenses and permits at 92,800. Now they've broken it out into 80,000 and 33,975. So the actual building permits have their own line item now, which they didn't have before. So 80,000 may be a little bit high. We
Yeah,
have
we
to
have
kind
to
of figure that out because we confirm now with Rich that Highland Ridge has pulled their permits.
And he's afraid to say it's probably gonna be like 20% less than what we brought in last year.
Right. And we don't really have any other large
No.
project on
What
the
do you mean by
horizon
pulled
that
them?
would
They
suffer.
withdrew them because they don't have?
No, they-
pulled a permit to do something.
Like they got a permit.
Oh,
Yeah. Sorry. That's just.
I
You know,
thought,
when you
I,
do a kitchen
technical-
repair, you have to pull a permit.
no, I understood it, but it's,
But Rich is saying this year it's down 20%.
oh, okay, that's where I
Over
missed
what-
the
yeah,
whole thing.
right.
Okay, down.
Because they got all the permits they needed basically in the last fiscal year. So we can't count on that revenue for 24.
And there was some sort of a change, legal change that was going on, and they wanted to get in before it happened or something, I don't know,
Yep.
it was something else too.
So, and then offset receipts, basically I did a 2.5% increase on the $4,400 of that's salary, which is why you have a 0.09% increase. Level funded receipts reserved for appropriation, we just don't, I think that's likely where we'll be. But I don't have enough information yet on like the cemetery receipts. I want to take a closer look at that. Interestingly enough, revenue sources, this free cash, sorry, I keep pointing at my screen, that's not helpful. I'm thinking I have an iPad. Free cash for contingency and BMS capital. So we talked about we're not likely to need that in '24. Yes.
It depends on what they ask for capital.
Okay, so right now, I left it blank, so that's why you have a negative 29. This is why there's so many variables, and so I don't want you to take these numbers as hard and fast. I level funded affordable housing, which actually I've now corrected to 7,000 because that can go down since I did build this out. And then public safety stabilization going up a little bit to account for increases in the new MOU that just got, and that's just a rough estimate, so.
With the MOU?
The new union contract, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yep, and then basically your estimated obligations, I literally took from your FY '23 actuals and the debt exclusion numbers. I am confirmed on the highway barn, but I still need to confirm Tohoto. I haven't gotten that number yet from the schools, so for right now I level funded it. So as you can see, kind of a lot of variables at this point, but where we're at overall, assuming all of these assumptions, what that would leave us at, and basically if you're looking at property taxes, I took FY '24 recap sheet of actuals for property tax, assumed level funded new growth at $300,000, assumed FY '23 state aid, we talked about the local receipt increase, offset receipts, just that small increase on the salary, level funded receipts reserved, other revenue sources, that probably will balance out if the schools are asking us for that. We have to set that aside for the capital side. So you're looking at roughly 15.6. And right now, the department requests total 15.47.
Does that include school in there?
That does not include the school increase.
And we don't even know Assabet at this stage either.
Correct. So what I did was I put a 5% escalator on Assabet and the schools, because that's in a typical year what you could expect. And looking back at some of the 4, 5, 6% increases, 5% is an average. So this does include a 5% increase for the schools, but obviously that's nowhere near the 12 or 20% that they're talking about. So my concern, and again, very preliminary, I just don't see that we have the capacity for a 12 or 20% increase. So again, I will have firmer numbers for you at your next meeting. I'm working up a version 2. This is just version 1. But also, just so you guys know, because I know people like this, we have 1,837,000 approximately in excess levy capacity. So there is additional funding that we could be taxing residents on that we are not. So we are being very fiscally conservative with our resources. I mean, I don't want to see people's taxes go up, particularly in this economy. And we've, you know, the departments, as you guys have noted at your last meeting over the past years, have been very frugal with their resources. Unfortunately, as we know, some of those things are going to come to a head because we've delayed doing things. There's been personnel positions that weren't filled that now are filled. There are projects that have to be done. So once we get to look at free cash when those numbers get certified, I think you'll find that number may be a bit larger or inflated because there were things that were put off or returned because of COVID. That's not going to be a number that continues year after year. So you may have some excess reflective of COVID in there that you're not going to see going forward. So I don't want to keep you here all night.
Right? That's,
Is that helpful?
Yes.
It's a good early
Yeah.
overview.
It's very preliminary. I
Yeah,
just
no,
caution,
I
I
get
mean,
it's
there's, yeah.
It's helpful.
And I'll put this up in the drive.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're ready to call it a night.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank
Okay, thanks.
you.